I think I have issues with Africa because a lot of the foreign expats who come here, there's a tendency of us like a superiority complex.
But Chris has already verified, and I confirm with him, there is already that they do feel superior.
The only thing I would add to that is, even take it out of the context of work. If a random European or American come for holiday, will they feel superior?
Yes.
So it's just an extension of that power dynamics.
The founders, or the expatriates as we're calling them, they don't have to adjust.
Yes.
They continue to be successful. And so one thing that I've also worked with multicultural, and one thing that this is in the, do we call them values or whatever, but it's like, assume the best intent, right? So when somebody comes directly, they're not coming because they want to disrespect you or whatever. Just assume the best intent.
Let me give you.
You see, when somebody comes in from abroad and does something, and then if they continue to be successful without having to change their attitude, they will continue to do that.
Yeah, we're going back to power.
It comes down to, can I be successful?
Until someone calls them out.
So every we've lived around the world, right? So every market you go to, people want to be respected. Having basic courtesy of, let's say, when you're welcoming someone to your house, removing your shoes. It's not something you say in my culture. We just walk in and I'll walk into. You know what I mean? Like, there's general standards of courtesy that are kind of like known.
No.
Yeah. So
you don't agree?
Because I have the reason why I don't agree is, especially outside cities, the people who meet each other and greet each other with abuses. And that's how they realize, like, if I like you, I abuse you. And you come to the city, find people with very fragile ego. If you say like, hey, we mjinga kuja hapa, oh, he called me a fool. Oh, no. Then I realize our standards of decencies are very different.
Chris, have you ever experienced? Yeah, you've never lived abroad, have you?
Have you experienced racism?
No. Have you ever lived abroad?
Yes.
Homa Bay is not abroad, my guy.
90% of the staff, because the regional office, were mostly expatriates.
Okay.
For jobs that you're just like, Yani, you brought someone from the Netherlands to come and manage a vending machine. Let me finish. That's that.
Okay.
And then what they would do, because the security guy would tell us, those days, I think it was, I don't know, Kajwang or something was they would renew the contracts of the permit. So what you'd find, a lot of these guys would come, were not anti, but then they don't even, the skills, let me finish. They don't even, there was no transfer skills. The people who are doing all the work, okay, are the locals. The pay disparity is so high. So you're like, at least even that pay disparity, at least if you had like some other superior skills where I'm like, every day I go to work, even if you're earning 6 times as much, I'm like, at least I'm learning these skills.
Do you believe in open markets?
I believe in open markets. And let me finish. And
there was a lady who was on Twitter, which I thought she said something which was a bit stupid. She said like, this year I'm only reading books by black authors. I'm like, get knowledge. That is the important thing. Read Chinese literature, read white literature, read whatever gives you knowledge. But once you've boxed yourself into like, I only read black people, I think.
But maybe she has a reason for that.
No, I think that's stupid. Human experience.
It depends on what you're trying to do. I won't dismiss it out of hand
that's
like
I
that.
would dismiss it out of hand because
I think, they contribute to diversity. Obviously, expatriates will bring in a lot more. They make cities more cosmopolitan.
Yeah.
They bring in their own, cultural attributes, whether it's the foods, the kind of culture, music, and just other social aspects. So I think that's good. Africans are already grounded in their norms and beliefs. So I don't see any negative influence. In fact, it's a positive for me. So
gazing.
No.
So
when I'm hiring people, I tend to hire people who are like me. Like
absolutely. You have that bias. Yeah.
I like people who are crazy. If I find someone who's well put in a suit, I wouldn't hire me.
I'm not crazy.
Yeah. So if someone tells me like their hobby is sniffing people's socks, then I'm like, oh yeah, this guy can do something, right? When you start hiring, diaspora remittance is number one.
Oh, it is number one.
Way more than agriculture.
And tea and coffee. Yeah.
It is like, it's here and tea and coffee.
And then tourism is like, what happened to
exactly.
tourism?
And so you see, the government, he claims he's flying around looking for jobs, but what he means is, I want you to go there, make money.
I mean, that logic is so circular.
While that government deals with your shit, and you don't deal with my shit, and
you just send money.
Back.
Yeah.
So there's some guy from the UN who said, the best city to live in is what you find what you're not looking for, right? Because there's diversity, there's different things. You wake up and find, I don't know, some transvestite who only kills male people. And you're like, man, this is insanity.
Hey, welcome to 2024. This year we continue to have conversations, bold conversations, courageous conversations about issues that could be affecting the startup space. And today we're going to be talking about the value expatriates, foreigners bring into the startup space. And this has been a request for a few of the listeners. So I hope you enjoy it. I have handpicked some experts in this field. So they might not consider themselves experts, but they're very knowledgeable. I'll start with a new face. Actually, someone told me I must invite you on the pod. Okay. So Karibu Stephen, and maybe just give us like a quick intro of who you are, and then a quick intro. I think as guys know Sid and Aura. So yeah.
Okay. My name's Steve Kamau Mureithi, born and raised in the city. Yeah. So I schooled locally at the University of Nairobi, and I had my stint working in the financial services sector for 8+ years. Right. Now I run my own consulting gig called Brainhouse Capital, where we advise SMEs and startups that are also looking to pitch to investors.
Yeah.
So this is basically my world, financial services, and it's a very interesting sector.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Sid, people's favorite.
Well, I didn't know that, but thank you. Hi everyone, Sydney, data storyteller and noisemaker.
Chris, the random guy.
Chris, the random guy. Do you guys have New Year's resolutions? Just one.
So I tried, but I failed because the holiday for me was just an ordinary holiday, and 2023 connected to 2024. And then I was like, you know what? I just need to keep on doing what I'm doing and try to become better at it. And then my favorite author, Nassim Taleb, said, if you need a New Year resolution, you have a problem in life. And I was like...
Yeah, I saw that actually on Twitter, yeah?
Yeah, on Twitter.
Yeah.
I was like, it probably makes a lot of sense because I was trying to evaluate a lot of the New Year's resolution will die by February.
Yeah.
I want to get fit. I want to read more. I want to get a new job. So I realized I just need to set long-term goals and just make sure every day I'm chipping a little bit getting towards that.
Same. I generally don't do resolutions. I just have goals and they come up as they come up. I'm building a house. I hope to finish it this year. That's the goal.
Oh,
wow.
Okay.
Yeah. It's traditional Luo stuff.
Oh.
Some people call it dead capital, but you work a remote job. I will be in that house.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. That's just one of the goals I'm willing to state here. Yeah.
Same. I don't have New Year's resolutions. It's kind of like continue doing what you were doing last year. Maybe the only thing I can add is maybe I want to do a bit more exercise, become a gym guy like this. That's it.
Cool. Yeah, I guess that's our common denominator. I actually also don't have resolutions. Just like chip away at the bigger goals, grow this channel.
Yeah.
Let's keep having conversations. Be happy, healthy. Just the usual.
Immigrants.
The first thing that comes to mind when I hear expats.
Yes, immigrants.
Immigrants.
They're all immigrants.
No, there's an expert and an expatriate. You might be mixing the two.
No.
What is the difference?
That's the short form.
An expatriate is an expert from a foreign country. An expert, technically, the definition is someone who has spent a lot of time doing something.
Oh, you mean an expat? Oh, yeah. No, when I hear expatriate, I think immigrant
He
first.
said expert, not expatriate.
That's now you are bringing a lot of
expat.
English.
Yeah,
No, we have to be.
No, it's the way he pronounced it because generally you shorten expat, expatriates to expat. right?
Not an expert.
And that
Expat with an A.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Anyway, me, I first think
Yeah,
immigrants, foreigners who go to a different place because there's opportunities there. Generally, that's what I think.
If you move to the US, would
Yes.
you be an expert?
Yes, of course. I've got 10 years of data science experience. Let me put some respect on my name, bro.
When my name come up, respect it.
Let's go.
Stop playing with my name. All three of y'all, stop playing with my name. I ain't gonna say it no more.
Damn.
You'd consider yourself that, but I don't think you'd be considered that.
Please. If you look, actually, the US is looking for guys like me and Chris these days to move. They have a whole AI bill for that. There's a whole website. You can go check it out. And they're looking for people who have experience with like AI and data to help move the country forward. So yeah, me, I'd be an expert. All of you would actually.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're not going there to do menial, unskilled labor.
Yeah.
At least I hope not.
But you can be an expert in dumpster diving, fixing
As long as you can get
cars.
paid.
I think an expat with an A.
Say the full one.
Expatriate.
Mujalo. Yes.
Yeah, that's what I think he meant.
Yeah, if you're an expatriate, it just means you're a foreigner who has been brought in for a very specific and specialized job.
I can agree with that.
I think the way it's been like framed is that when you think of expat, you think of like Western foreigners who come and work outside their home countries,
Are the Chinese expats?
right? So this is how it's framed. But then if I go to America or Europe as an African, I'm called an African immigrant, right? And so I don't understand that kind of like double standard of how you use the language.
I don't get offended by that because it's a power dynamic. I in this case is the Western world. We are superior than you, so we can call you what we want.
Nigga.
Right? And there's nothing you can change apart other than your economy end up being big.
Yeah.
A South African going to Europe is an expert. A Zimbabwean, a Kenyan going to Europe is an African immigrant because South Africa economy is bigger, they're whiter. So
Anyway, I'd just like to point out, I started first word, immigrant. So, and the reason why for me that's the case, and this might not, I partially agree with you, but when I think about it, like my dad moved from here to Zambia, and he was called an expat. Right? Expatriate, right? And so for me, it's always been like somebody with skills leaves their country, goes
To go to
somewhere
another.
else.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So if I left, and I'm relatively skilled. It's not like I'm going there to wash dishes. I might be the best dishwasher.
But you're
in the world.
forgetting you're moving from Kenya. Your dad moved from Kenya to Zambia, right? Those are countries which are almost peers, right? Okay. If I move to Tanzania tomorrow, I'll be an expert. If I go to UG, I'll be an expert.
I think the Tanzanians would think you're an immigrant. They don't like us much over there.
But the dynamics is that we are almost similar from an economic perspective. If you move to England, then it'd be like, an African immigrant or opportunity migrant, whatever.
I mean, who has gone to America or Europe or Australia? You never hear people saying the African expats.
Yeah.
Have you?
It's always the African immigrants. Maybe to other African countries, yes, as you're saying. But I think when you go to the industrialized world, no one ever says African expatriates.
If you work with laws of, I don't know if
But
it's laws of
it's just
average.
weird.
The average person moving from Kenya to the UK, for example, is going to be a truck driver. He's going to be a housemaid, whatever it is. The majority of people who move are not IT experts, data scientists for that. So the psyche of...
But is that really true? Because I mean, when you think
we can run the
No,
numbers.
the numbers agree with him.
Yes.
But
I think also,
But I
Chris,
think
I think
also
that
if you
that is changing. I think there's a time that people, like my case, for example, I moved to Australia to study there.
Yeah.
And I studied a skill that was very sought after in Australia. But I was still considered a skilled immigrant.
And
I
that's what
was
I'm
never
saying.
considered.
The
but like
immigrant
that's...
bit,
Yeah.
the immigrant bit comes from the power dynamics.
Yeah.
And think
Then
about
that's
it.
the
Even
thing
localize it. Let's say Nairobians versus people who move from Shags to Nairobi. You'll realize there's always a power dynamic.
But Chris, we never call them shags, modos, because
Okay.
we are... like, you
some
know-
people do.
Yeah.
that's what we're here to challenge. This
Yeah,
power
that's-
dynamic.
yeah,
That's the
that's-
whole
power
idea.
dynamics will never go
I
away.
understand there's some power in words, but what does it matter whether we call them immigrants or expats? The point is there's some skill being transferred.
Yeah.
right? So for me, that's what matters. Is there some skill being transferred, or
I dare
being
say
brought here?
people were challenging this use of these words at the woke folk who like, oh, address me properly. Some people would say, I don't care how you call me, just pay me right. And I don't care if you call me African immigrant, whatever you want, right? Power dynamics will never go away in this world. If you track ever since the dawn of civilization to date, right? You'll realize there's always one group of people who are better off than other. And the person who's better off will determine how they want to call you, right?
Yeah.
You as the underdog, you almost have no recourse of how they're determined to call you. If they want to call you sub-Saharan African immigrant, whatever, they'll call you that.
Okay. So, Chris, a question for you. I understand and I agree with you. Power dynamics will always be there.
Yeah.
And this is okay when you're like a minority in a country. Like, say, Wangari has gone to Australia. I'm called a name. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Like, totally. I am. This is not home. This is not.
Okay.
But what happens if it's flipped, where you're in this country, born and raised in Kenya?
Okay.
You, to some extent, I could be called an expatriate because I brought my skills into Kenya, and then there's this power dynamics.
Okay. You see, we can even go this to a tribal level.
Okay. Yeah.
Because you'd say, I like calling them Kikuyu supremacists because they're in power, they run most businesses. So they feel, if you look at how many
businesses, let's be clear.
Okay, let's say that's the perception that's there. If you look at how many derogatory words are there between Kikuyu derogatory word for Luos, there will be so many compared to the Luo derogatory words for Kikuyu. Because that's a power thing, right? If you want a loan, you'll go there like, we're the ones giving money. If you want political power, we're the ones who determine who becomes president, right? So you can localize this to very many levels. You realize this, it inevitably never disappears.
Okay.
Yeah. So is it right? No. But there is someone who say that you cannot avoid hierarchy in the world.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes. So at some phase, it just happens.
So you're just saying we're stuck with it. You don't think we can do better. What do you?
What do you mean by do better, though?
I mean, okay, and I'll draw back my experiences from spending a lot of time in Australia, working in Australia. They are very intentional about like equal opportunities. And this is like, even like if you're having like a meeting, they are aware of like the land they're having this meeting. Like they say, like, you know, we are aware of the ancestors who lived here before us and after. You know, that's and I know Chris would call that.
No, forget that's that. I call it white guilt, right? That is like, oh, now someone said if and part of why sometimes I like Malema.
I love Malema.
If you're really repentant, give back the land and move back to Europe.
Exactly.
They're not do that. They're like, oh, they'll pick the soft things or will
apologize.
Malema,
but okay, there's the apology, and
if you really mean it,
yeah.
Malema said when he's not a prince, now a king. When King Charles came to Kenya, it's like, it's useless. If you're really repentant.
The British know what they did to the Kenyan people, and they've got no business putting their foot here, except that they should pay reparations to the Kenyans, because that's the only way, and that's the only genuine apology we'll accept from the British. So we don't think that his visit is of any significance in the development of Kenya and the African continent, unless they are able to commit the pounds, trillions of pounds, to try and heal the deep wound that they've left in Kenya.
Give Kenya 1 trillion.
Send money.
Send money. M-Pesa is open for business. So, but I feel that is you're picking the soft.
Okay, no, I haven't finished. That was one aspect. Like even like in the workplace, like you'd always be, like there's a lot of training around how to.
But allow me to interject. You said equal opportunities, right? I like this phrase going around saying there should be equal opportunities, but not equal outcome.
Yeah.
Give everyone the opportunity to become what they want, but don't expect that because you gave everyone opportunities,
that the outcome will be this.
The outcome will also be equal.
Yeah.
Actually, that was just the initial question around the terminologies of immigrant versus expats. But I think the more important question here is issues to do with opportunity. So what is attached to that term? When you say you're an expatriate from a foreign country and you're working in Africa, does that come with certain sort of benefits?
It does.
Or opportunities or privileges that would not be available to the local? And the question should be, why so? If we're talking about skills, and locals have similar skill sets, the fact that you're an expat means that you are able to demand...
There's something I'd like to correct. You'll never create an equal society. That's something everyone who has tried has failed. Socialism and communism was an idea to create an equal society, and they realized it gets worse. Okay? By the time I am coming from the US, but the mere fact that I'm just from the US already carries too much privilege, too many things, right? When you come in here, and I have had the privilege of working in an area where someone would land in Kenya and they go to LinkedIn like, hey, I'm in Kenya, who can I meet? They would come to IHub. They're like, and I've met so many people who they go to my LinkedIn and say like, hey, my name is so I've just landed in Kenya. I'm trying to meet data scientists, blah, blah, blah. Can we have a coffee?
We get all those messages.
Right? Can we have a coffee? I would say that's where we fail. I would never go to the US and say like, "Hey, I'm trying to meet."
But that's
people.
Outcome of lack of networks. So one of the things that I think about in this whole thing is that if somebody is coming from the US to here, he's coming with dollars.
Yeah.
We've all seen what has happened. What has happened with the dollar to Kenya shilling rate. But more than that, he's also coming with networks.
Yeah.
Right.
True.
And you see, he has the access because he has the network. He went to a US school where he met a Kenyan. So that Kenyan who, because he went to the US, probably has a wider network just by the fact that sometimes you have a wider network, not because you were smarter or whatever, it is just the opportunities that you got, right?
Yes.
So for example, I'm in a school in the US right now. If somebody from my school came, they landed here and saw that I was here, they'll reach out to me.
Yeah.
And through me, we'll be able to meet a bunch of startups. Right?
Familiarity.
The familiarity. Just by the fact that, so which means that if I go to the States right now and I was looking for, I would reach out to an old network. I have schoolmates who are there. I would reach out to them. But you see, you can do the same, and he would connect, the schoolmates would connect me to somebody else.
Let's localize this. There's someone in Turkana, struggled, half lived as a bandit, managed to go to school by stealing and selling cows, and then all of a sudden he lands in Nairobi. This guy almost knows no one in Nairobi.
Yes.
You schooled in Nairobi. You probably, if I need some guy for, I don't know what, you already have your networks. This guy will struggle so much to even get basics going on. But for you already have some network going. But the mere fact that you lived in Nairobi, your parents lived in Nairobi, you went to school with so-and-so, so you can easily... So the guy in Turkana and you lived in Nairobi is the same as you and someone who lived in the US.
Exactly. So yes, it is unfair, but it is structurally unfair, and there's nothing we can. There's very little you can do about that.
What we can do, the issues to do with access to the networks.
With issues to do with access.
Yeah, that's just not a personal thing.
It's actually a personal.
It's not just personal. It's also structural in some sense.
Another guy
in the sense of that. If somebody is moving from for example, what Chris was talking about, or what we all said about reaching in on LinkedIn, right? Now, if I was moving into a new city, I can do the same thing.
Yes.
Right? But you see, perhaps some Kenyans don't think like that, right?
Yep.
But Americans will just be like, generally, we reach out to people. Right? And so that comes down to structural and even, I don't call it moxie, but just even like, it's how let's say they were brought up. Whatever.
Cultural.
Yes. Cultural.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's cultural, and then there's that hegemony of, yes, it's somebody. So, like, for example, if somebody's coming from the States and wanted to meet here, right? And was like, hey, I'm interested in startups. For me, what I'm thinking is like, maybe he has access to dollars.
or other networks.
Or cash. For example, if you had reached out to me on LinkedIn, by the way, follow me on LinkedIn. But if you had reached out to me on LinkedIn, I'll go to your profile, see, this guy knows about startups. Then immediately, if you ask me for coffee, I'll begin thinking, who do I know who needs money? Right? Or who I know who could benefit from that? Is this worth me taking this meeting?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
that's how you think. So if somebody's coming from the States, they've already taken that risk, right? They're coming in, they'll be like, oh, I'm a researcher. You're like, oh, that's interesting. What are they going to research in? If that's something you're interested in. And that's how it works. So sometimes I look at like the arguments for expats and the access that they have. Sometimes I'm like, you can't fix that. It's the same way some people have access to the president and they get tenders.
Yeah.
That's true, but I think when we'll delve into this a little later is that's fine because, as you said, you have access to the networks and privileges that you have. But also what you shouldn't do and what we're trying to call out here is just don't be disrespectful to people you find in a nation you go to.
There are two things.
That's it.
There are two things I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Chris, go. Yeah.
One, after Nassim read about Naval.
Naval's great.
Naval Ravikant?
Yeah.
And Nassim. Oh, yeah.
The two of them are like my favorite. There's something you say, like your success in life tends to revolve around three things.
Yeah.
Where you are, what you decide to do, and who you marry. So where you are counts a lot because that's where the networks come from. If I go to an Ivy League school, even if I'm the dumb of the dumbest, it already draws me into a very big pool of people. So if I decide I want to move to Kenya, right, and I stay in that ecosystem and make networks, right? Someone who cannot come to Nairobi because they don't know anyone, they don't have the money, the environment already excludes them from that network. And it's something that has to do with poverty, it has to do with so many other things. So it's something you can almost not eliminate. Okay? You cannot create that level field. Second thing, there is a thing about, you talked about culture. I wanted to add something about that. There are people like, African culture, my point has been that the reason why we were conquered is because one culture was superior than ours. I know people don't want to talk about that. I have our culture. The culture, let's say that Americans grow up in, like, go there, take something, it belongs to you, conquer the world. It's unlike you that once you build your own home and like your house and you have your car there and your two wives, you're like, I'm done, right? I'll give an example. When I was working for company X, there's a guy who, he is Kenyan, but grew up in the UK and did his university in the UK and lived in the UK a little bit and then moved back to Kenya. So he sent me a message on LinkedIn and it's like, hey, my name is so-and-so. I'm in the UK. I'm moving back to Kenya. I'm trying to look for opportunities around data. I'd like to meet you for lunch. Then I was like, okay, it's lunchtime. Let me go hang out with them. So I talked to this guy. He brought me his CV. He told me what his experience has been, what he knows, what he doesn't know, and what he wants to do. Then I told him, like, hey, you know what? Oh, great. When an opportunity comes up, I'll let you know. The way you just tell people off. Then this guy, after 1 month, sent me another message. Hey, Chris, I'm just checking in if, an opportunity came up. I remembered him. Then I was like, I'll let you know. Then the third time, he's like, I've applied to this company. I don't know whether it's a good company. Have you encountered this company before? Just to let me know so that if it's a good opportunity. Then I realized, like, this guy is taking his career seriously. He's engaging me a lot. And then an opportunity opened up in the company. Then I was like, hey, there's an opportunity opened up around data. It's not exactly what you wanted, but it's different if you want to try it. Then he was like, I'll take it, right? I'm willing to take it. I want to learn. We can work together. Maybe I can grow and all that. Most Kenyans won't do that.
Really?
They wouldn't. A Kenyan will send you their CV. They'll tell you, hey, I'm looking for an opportunity, then send you a CV and that's it. Okay? You don't have to ask for lunch, but there is that persistence. There is that showing, I really need this. Not in a desperate manner, but in a career, like, I think this is good for my career. I think the company you work for. Most people just want to work for money, which I don't think is a problem. But from that cultural perspective, you can tell that this guy was brought up in a very different environment than your usual guy who throws into CV. Hey, if something comes up, let me know. And that's it.
Yeah. But just before... I wanted to come back to what you're talking about with I think you said disrespect. Could you just go a bit more?
I think there's a tendency of course, this is a generalization that, and even I saw it where I worked. I don't know if I'm allowed to say. I don't think it's polite to say the name of the company.
We don't to be sued.
Exactly.
If you have proof.
We've already been sued once.
What's a second of that?
Look, we live in a multicultural society.
Yeah.
We live in a diverse society. You also want a mix of people from different cultures, because even look at America, it's built on the strength of immigrants, okay?
Yeah.
I think I have issues with Africa because a lot of the foreign expats who come here, there's a tendency of us like a superiority complex.
But Chris has already verified, and I confirm with him, there is already that. They do feel superior.
The only thing I would add to that is, even take it out of the context of work. If a random European or American come for holiday, will they feel superior? Yes. So it's just an extension of that power dynamics.
Yeah, but I think, Chris, like, it's okay to... Like, I think you gave a good example. Someone who grew up in the city versus someone who grew up in, like, shags. Apparently, people make, like, who makes fun of those guys? You know, as a person, you'd never look down upon them and be disrespectful.
No, it happens. Let me tell you. You will go to the city. It happens. People in the city.
You've not heard of people coming to the city to live with their relatives, and then they're being used as maids.
No, even
that
apart,
is disrespectful. They would not do that to a
not even
city
apart from
person.
that. Go even to the sense that this guy comes from, I don't know, maybe some deep place in Gashororo or somewhere in Siaya, and he comes in with a very deep blue accent. Wana, what do you want? And you're coming with your Nairobi English. Hey, you guy. There's already some power dynamics where you'll realize the people who grew up in Nairobi feel a little bit of.
Yeah, but we shouldn't be comfortable with
Yeah,
this.
with that.
To your
Honestly,
point,
why are we comfortable with that?
is all I'm saying is whoever you are, whatever country you go to, just have just some basic respect for the skills and the people you meet. If I'm gonna be running a startup and I move to a different country like Uganda, or I don't know, Germany as an example, I can't go and then undermine or treat the people, the locals who
you see why you can't
work
do that?
there.
The companies like Japan,
But I rely on them to generate this
Japanese
revenue.
people are built on respect for humanity and all that. Even if you
Really, I think the Chinese would disagree with that. But go on.
no,
Let's go on, please.
we'll diverge into another area. But typically, anyone who interacts with Japanese people in general, they know that respect is one of the top things they have in their country, even in Kenya. I remember someone was comparing when Ngong Road was being constructed, and I think Thika Road was about to be finished. And the etiquette between the Japanese people on Ngong Road and the Chinese people. They say Japanese people are very respectful, right? They never want to come and interfere with... of course, you find one or two people who are crazy, but generally they tend to be very respectful people because it comes from the upbringing when they're still very young to respect everything, respect the environment, respect the elders, respect everyone. And I saw a funny video in Japan where at the zebra crossing, when a bus stops, when a child crosses, the child crosses and then bow down to the driver as a way of telling him, thank you for stopping the car, right? And they extend that everywhere they go. Now, what are the Americans built of? Individualism. I am right. I will sue you. And so it is just how their society is. And if you read history, go deep into history, like when tribes were still fragmented, like even in Europe, some tribes were known to be like hard-headed people.
Yeah, but Chris, isn't that the challenge we're trying to get to? Like, yes, I understand you have your individualism, you have your values, but you come into my example, come into my house.
Okay.
You notice the feng shui or something, the couch is not where it's meant to be, the water is, and then start shifting. Isn't that like kind of disrespectful?
Let's use an example of your house.
Yeah.
Right? I would, depending, let's say we're just random people, Sydney will come with his muddy boots and just get into the house and not care that about it. Somebody else, he will come and make sure, I have to remove my socks and my shoes and put them outside.
Yeah.
Right? Another person will come and walk in and go straight to your kitchen or to your bedroom.
Yeah.
There's some people who don't like, there are places which are out of bound.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? Upbringing.
Right. Yep.
Now, you're saying like all these people who have different upbringing, when they come to your house, you expect them to behave in the same manner. That's what you're saying, right?
Not same manner, but it's just like the bare minimum respect.
So I think what she's trying to say is you come into somebody's house, learn enough to be respectful.
I understand that. I don't disagree with that.
But when it comes to to like a larger ecosystem, in your house you can tell somebody right at the door.
Yeah.
What to
The
expect.
rules.
The rules.
Exactly.
But when it's somebody coming in from out, if they arrive and they continue to succeed with their attitude,
I have.
then they see no reason to change it.
Exactly. That's why we need to hold each other accountable and say.
I have a very good example.
So what I'm thinking about is like, what is a very, like, just one example where you feel that somebody, you could just give they were disrespectful.
I have a very good example.
We can dissect.
Okay,
that.
I think like so.
I have an
my
example.
producer always go for it.
Before I forget, sorry for cutting you short.
It's okay.
And this is the perfect way of addressing this. I saw this video in BBC, I think maybe 5-6 years ago, where there's a British lady who went hiking in Nepal, the Himalayas, Everest. So you know it's very cold. It's a very tough environment. So they're like those local tribes who live within the mountains. So this lady, as she was doing her trek up the mountain, she got one of the base for the mountain, and then it was very cold. Blah blah blah. Then this woman took her in, or like, I have an Airbnb in the mountain. She housed her very well, gave her warm water, cooked for this lady, washed her clothes, whatever. Then next in the morning, the lady was to leave. Now go ahead with the trek. Now this lady is expecting some form of payment. And then this British lady asked, like, how much do you want? I think she said like 2 or 3 pounds, which is very cheap, very cheap money, right? And then this British lady started haggling with her on the price. Oh, let me give you 1.5. Let me give you this. So this lady
very
was
typical, yeah.
very offended.
Yeah.
She's like, I have done more than I've brought you into my house. I've cooked for you. I've looked after you. And you still feel the need to argue with me on 3 pounds.
Yeah.
And then it ended up this Nepalese lady chasing this woman down the mountain. And then this lady was taking a photo like, oh, I'm being chased. I'm being attacked. And all kind of thing.
No.
So people went
This is a true story.
This is a true story.
It's a true story.
Oh,
You can go find it online. Now, people were arguing like, this is £3. Why could she give it?
Yeah.
And she's one person came in and gave in a very good idea, which I liked, was that in British culture, haggling is norm. Even if you tell me the lowest price, I have to haggle. It's like it's like a conversation. Like if you tell me it's £2 and I just pay you £2, it feels wrong. Like we have to haggle on the price. But this Nepalese lady, you're supposed to be so grateful that whatever, like in essence, give what you have. So there's a culture clash. So when you have those expat Americans coming to here and they're very bossy in that kind of way, and then you expect decency, you expect...
No, I don't know if I agree with that, because it's what you call general standards of courtesy, right?
Your general standards are not the general standards.
Let me finish. So every we've lived around the world, right? So every market you go to, people want to be respected. Having basic courtesy of, let's say, when you're welcoming someone to your house, removing your shoes, it's not something you say in my culture. We just walk in and I'll walk into... You know what I mean? Like there's general standards of courtesy that are kind of like known.
No.
Yeah. So
you don't agree?
Because
I
have the reason why I don't agree is, especially outside cities, the people who meet each other and greet each other with abuses. And that's how they realize, like, if I like you, I abuse you. And you come to the city, find people with very fragile ego. If you say like, hey, we mjinga kuja hapa, oh, he called me a fool. Oh, no. Then I realize our standards of decencies are very different. Like I could come in and decide, like if I go to work, right? Because I have been sensitized, I have been taken through trainings, I realize what constitutes basic standards of, like I could not.
And that's the point.
Yeah, then train people to have that.
And I'm sorry, I think if you're a foreigner coming here, you will know that. You will know you're not a guy from the village.
I'm still struggling with a specific, particularly in this discussion of example, I'm still struggling with a specific example of what we call
good example.
disrespect.
Your friend from Kune Foods. I know my producer said I shut up about this story and it should never come up in any podcast. But I think that's one time when Kenyans felt very disrespected by a founder who came in after, and then you spend 2 or 3 days, and then you're like,
I will tell you this.
You don't, and
I worked in a company X, and our team was multicultural, including in Kenya.
What is anyway?
Cultural meaning people from different races, white people, Indian, blacks. So we were very mixed. and we got into a very trouble, and our team got into trouble because, first of all, being data scientists, we are used to discussing ideas, first of all. Forget the culture part. Second, there was this guy who was from a white country. He's used to be very direct. And he'll tell you something in a way that you won't like it. So when he was to advise these other teams, he was so cross that these other people are like, why can't this guy be nice? These guys are like, no. If something's not working, it's not working. I don't know any other way of telling you it's not working. That standard you're talking about, how to treat people, right? I came to realize that these people were used in an environment where even if they did something wrong, there had to be a gentle way of telling
That's fine.
them.
It's a different culture,
and this,
different expectation.
Yes. And this guy is a guy who sends you a text at 9 p.m. And you're like,
but you're the one going there. No, listen, when you say when you go to Rome, do what the Romans do, right? I can't go to Rome and then I go there with my own culture and my own attitude.
The guy says that, hey, you brought me here to make change, right?
But understand the cultural nuances. I'm not saying you change your, but understand it's important. Anytime you're working in a multicultural setting, you need to study the environment. You need to understand the nuances of the different cultural differences.
That. I don't take away from that.
You can't just be like me. I was raised like this.
Let me give you an example. I teach, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I usually go around East Africa. Let me tell you, how you teach Kenyans, how you teach Tanzanians, and how you teach Ugandans.
Different.
It's very different.
Exactly.
Content is the same, right?
Exactly.
And there are some cultures which respect is everything.
Yep.
Like if we don't care whether we understand or not, but if you already come with the disrespect, we don't care what you're about to teach.
Exactly.
Right? You can take your knowledge anywhere else. So I have to sometimes, adapt and adjust.
Exactly.
Right. But
so the founders or the expatriates, as we're calling them, they don't have to adjust.
Yes.
They continue to be successful. And so one thing that I've also worked with multicultural, and one thing that they is in the, do we call them values or whatever, but it's like assume the best intent, right? So when somebody comes directly, they're not coming because they want to disrespect you or whatever. Just assume the best intent.
Let me give you.
You see, when somebody comes in from abroad and does something, and then if they continue to be successful without having to change their attitude, they will continue to do that.
Yeah, we're going back to power.
It comes down to, can I be successful?
Until someone calls them out.
Not even just call them.
And this is where you can see a difference between East Africa and somewhere like West Africa, like Kenya and Nigeria. Do you think half of them would go and diss a Nigerian on their food? I beg. What would happen?
There's someone who told me.
Seriously, until someone calls it out.
But did he not catch
But
hell?
that's just an example. You
Did
asked
he
for an
not catch
example.
hell?
He did catch hell.
And you see, the thing is, he learned his lesson.
Yeah.
But you see,
Thank you. And that's because people spoke out.
But
and
exactly.
you said, bro, you don't do that around here.
What else are we speaking out against?
No. There's something. Think about like a rich dude, right? He knows. Let me use this bad example. This is rich dude. He knows that he can have a woman. He can treat her the way he likes. And because he has money and the woman needs money, like, there's nowhere you'll go. But if you're like equal partners in a relationship, you really have to mind your manners.
She could also make the option of, she could also leave eventually.
But she knows that.
Despite him having those resources.
Exactly.
No, she knows that if I leave...
If the workers who are working for you under an organization, they may not, you're saying they're successful, but if the workers are unhappy, that means they will not be able to deliver to full potential capacity, and there will be very high turnover
What think you're forgetting?
within the organization.
That only works...
Eventually they fail.
Which
is fine. He fails, he goes back to his country.
Exactly.
But you see, that only works when you're dealing with low-skilled workers. That only works when you're dealing with... If you're dealing with the high-skilled workers, then their motivation really matters. When you're dealing with the low-skilled worker, someone loading bags of cement on a truck, I don't need you motivated. I need you working.
I'm sorry, may I need you motivated.
No. Because if you break your back, I'll just replace you with somebody else. But if you're hiring a designer or you're hiring some scientist, the motivation really plays.
Okay, Chris, where I disagree with you. like no matter where you are in a company, whatever. Have you ever gone to these banks where the watchee is so motivated? He knows the company values. But he's like, use the app. You know, that's what
that watchee is not a low skilled worker. That's a customer care agent who is.
He's been told he's a customer care agent. Someone else will tell him, but you're just a watchee.
I'm not supporting any of like behave like a douchebag.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not supporting all that, right?
Okay.
But in my observation, having worked with different types of people, for me, the reason why I could adjust when I go to UG or TZ, it's because I consider them almost being, we are equal partners, right?
Exactly.
That's what I'm saying. In a relationship where all of you, like, you're earning, I'm earning, we are almost equal partners, I'll tend to behave much better than when I'm like, you're a housewife and I bring everything. I'll be like, hey, but do you know what? You can actually leave.
So what are you saying, Chris? That there's a power dynamic, and with the expats and when they're dealing with Africans, we're just inferior.
That's they're like, there's almost.
What are you saying?
What I'm saying is that there's almost nothing you can do. He's the one who owns the money. He's the one who came with $3 million worth of investments. Did you bring $3 million in investments? There's something Caroline Mutoko said, that they sit in a room and people are giving their opinions. And then someone gave their opinion. Then Caroline Mutoko asked the person, do you write checks in this? Do you write checks? Because if you write checks, I'll listen. If you don't write checks, I will not listen. It is arrogant.
Chris, and the thing with me, for me, I don't think that's how you do business well, especially in a country like in Africa. Like, I don't think
I have added a caveat.
Okay.
If you want to hire that highly skilled people, you have to behave.
Or pay them more. I can take a lot of shit for money.
So we're in agreement. What's the bone of
you can't change it. That's what I'm saying. As long as someone comes in with that money, I'm willing to be abused because, like, I have rent. I have, like what Sydney is saying. People will take abuse for money. That's why we have a lot of people getting hanged in Saudi Arabia, and still droves of housemates still go there because they goddamn need the money.
Yeah, my question, my point is, it doesn't cost you anything to just treat people with basic decency. That's it, and make money at the same time, and have employees who are like they're gunning for you and they want. That's it.
But sometimes people don't want to change.
Yeah.
And if you see,
I disagree. People. Again, let's say Nigeria.
If I can continue,
think of Nigeria.
You see, Nigerians, if you're not going to be successful in Nigeria, you can. And the thing is,
let me tell you.
I think there's a misconception that Nigerians are out here throwing white people out in their They are not.
But you don't know.
And so
there's something.
And so the respect thing. Maybe we are more. How to call it? Subversives. But
what?
Thank you, subservient.
Submissive.
Right? Yeah, maybe, right?
Yeah, we are.
But you see, in the grand scheme of things, when you look at all of it, it comes down to, did you bring cash, right? We are all trying to make a living here, right?
I want to disagree with something.
if you continue to be able to make money, right? So yes, we may want to change but perhaps what we need is that more Africans need to be making money so that
I want to talk about
people are not
East
hired
and
by
West African
expatriates to get disrespected.
I want to talk about the East because
Wait.
that is enough. That was the
sorry.
The East and West African, because I have a friend who's Canadian British who came to Kenya, and he travels a lot.
Yeah.
And he was telling me, man, I went to Nigeria. People are proud. They don't keep English names. In Kenya, you have Hurlingham, Lavington. You have all these English names. A Nigerian will never take that. And I was like, okay, I've never noticed that, but it makes sense. Then I was also in UG, and we were
now
talking
he's
about,
telling you that's what you do. What? Then he's telling you that's
we just talk about random things together, like when he travels, what we notice, and that kind of thing. So I was trying to put why is that so, right? One of the reasons is, even in Mau Mau, there are collaborators and there are the fighters, right? A Nigerian would be like, my pride comes before anything.
Exactly.
I'd rather be poor, but have my pride.
Yeah.
And as we're in UG with a friend working at night, and we're talking how most of us, like especially in Nairobi, our first language is English.
Yeah.
Right? But Ugandans, it's Luganda, right? And Lugandans are very proud people, right?
Yeah.
But if you look at the Kenya economy and the Ugandan economy and the Kenyan economy and the Nigerian economy, in Kenya and Nigeria, if you look at GDP per capita, you'd realize Sometimes pride gives you no money, right? You can be proud and say, my culture, my whatever. So another person would say, I'd rather lose my culture and make money. And to conclude that, I was reading a book about the Jews and how they moved all over the world. Some were forcibly converted to Christianity and Islam. So you're given a choice. Either we kill you or you convert at the point of the sword. The proud people agreed to, like, I will die for my religion. Other people are like, you know what? I agree to convert. I'll practice my Judaism under the raider. So they ended up surviving. They're the ones who ended up making the state of Israel for that. So as much as in pride is a good thing, you can look at, would I rather be proud and poor? Would I rather compromise and make some money? That's
survive.
And survive. And at the end of the day, you need to survive first. Survival is animal instinct. So whoever who prioritizes, I would give thumbs up to someone who prioritizes survival than pride.
So what impact do you think choosing survival over pride is doing to...
It erodes culture.
Yep.
It erodes.
It's making. I think it also erodes
self-esteem.
Yes, it does.
All those things you made to feel like you're less than.
And what does that do to a person?
Yeah.
It demoralizes them. But you see, survival...
That's the same person you're relying on to build your startup. That's
Think about your
demoralized.
housemaid. You can decide to treat your housemaid as shitty as you want.
Yeah.
You can decide to treat them as nice as you want. Right? It's upon you, right? If she fails in a duty, you can just fire her and bring somebody else, right? The onus on treating that person well sits with whoever has power. So as an employer of the housemaid, you're the one who has power.
Yeah.
Right? You can tell her, like someone says, you cannot speak vernacular in my house. If you're a housemaid and in my house, you have to speak English. And the people who do that in their houses, right? And those housemaids struggle. Maybe they never went to school. They feel whatever they have to feel, right? Definitely, it is a bad thing. It will erode the self-esteem of the person. But that person will remember, I have a sick mom in the village.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, and I do think it's even like good, like, to know that it's even a privilege having this conversation and having that awareness.
Yes. Yeah.
This awareness is like it's a privilege, and I do take that into account. But I do think having like these conversations and like, because it does have so much impact, because that demoralized person might be a star if they decided, actually, let me choose poverty over like the money thing, and decided
How
to
will
start
they be a star without money?
Then this is where I think again, like, we've been eroded so much of our culture.
Of course it
like
has.
if we come together, like if you had an idea to build
Self-belief.
Yeah, if you have that self-belief, and if I propped you up, like,
if we want to change this, this conversation will change it. It has to start from how we raise our kids.
Yeah, exactly.
How we live as a society, how we live as people. I remember when 2 days ago.
And then, Chris, I think it always even starts with learning, as we say, knowledge, having that knowledge that
If when the Japanese aircraft crashed on the runway the other day.
This morning, an emergency on the runway in Tokyo. This aircraft bursting into flames at Haneda Airport. The plane collided with another plane operated by the Japanese Coast Guard, according to the Coast Guard spokesperson. All of the nearly 400 people on the passenger plane are safe.
And everyone was calm. They followed the instructions of the crew until everyone was evacuated. A lot of people commented like, if this was our country, half the people will die. We will go for our luggage. It shows you there's so much training and instilling. I'm not saying Japanese are the best people in the world. They have their own problems with suicide and other things. But when it comes to that proper training, they're one of the countries that have done it exceptionally well. So if we want to feel like we have to treat people well, just basic courtesy is something good. If you go somewhere, respect people. We have to change our values. Let me tell you, what do you value? What do you value? Your house, your car. We don't value our neighbors. Tell me, how many neighbors do you know in your estate?
All of them.
How many do you know?
Very many.
No, just keep lying.
I don't know. I know like
Thank you. I only know 2 of my neighbors. And because the one is next to me, sometimes we need to help each other, like he doesn't have water, I have water. And then the other one welcomed us when we moved in, and it was a friend to the house where we moved in. The rest...
But
you make the effort to go and
personally,
when you move into a new area.
Exactly.
And that's why I'm not blaming anyone. That's why I'm saying I have to make that effort.
But I think, Chris, sometimes I think that's where the change needs to start.
Yes.
Like, it's in our numbers, it's in our conversations we have. It's like, hey, we're here together.
Exactly.
Like, and if
I would like to point out also in this conversation, as much as Chris is saying that it won't change anything, somebody will watch it and
and be like, okay, I hear it. Yeah.
Maybe it's a spark.
Thank you, Sydney, for Chris.
That was a long, fast question, eh?
What is the next question? So the first question we're going to now is just expatriates.
yeah.
Oh, Lord.
There's some things you probably answered.
Chambua.
But firstly, are expats essential for driving economic growth in African countries? Discuss.
I can start.
Oh, and then, sorry, before you start, guys, please let people finish their drink.
Ni huyu, Chris.
Like, just hold it.
Hata niandike notes basi ndio nikumbuke.
At least let someone talk
Okay.
for a minute before you.
All right.
And let everyone talk.
Then you give everyone a chance.
It's
to
not,
participate.
yeah.
Okay?
All righty.
Steve, take us.
Steve.
I think that would have to have some nuance. I'd say yes and no. I'd start by saying yes in the sense that a lot of expatriates who work across the Africa are actually employed. So they work, a lot of your expatriates, particularly when you look at markets like Kenya, work in the development finance agencies, the NGOs, embassies, DFI institutions, and maybe a few in corporate. So they come as, not as innovators per se, but as employees. So yes, they contribute towards consumption, just like other Kenyans contribute who are employed or gainfully employed contribute towards consumption. But in terms of driving economic growth and saying that expatriate income as a percentage of GDP is something that is so substantial that if all the expatriates were to leave the country would collapse, I think that's a bit far-fetched, right? Because all expatriates there are founders and innovators, but probably less than 1-2%. Most of them are employees. So I don't think that if all the expatriates were to leave per se, that the economy would collapse, because the Kenyan economy, to be specific, is largely run by Kenyan businesses and multinationals that hire locals to work in that setup. And we'll get to a further question around the difference between having expatriate workers and having foreign direct investment, because those are totally separate conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, let me go next. So I think they contribute a lot to GDP. I think via things like skill transfer, not just consumption. I don't think we can just look at it whether they pay taxes or frequent our businesses. I think there's something to be said about learning from, and to be clear, I'm going to say this and it might sound, but learning from people who've already done it, right? And that's not to say that we don't have Africans who've done it, but they're not everywhere, right? For example, if somebody was starting a podcast and there were 10 Wangaris or honeypots, and then there was one foreigner, right? That is the foreigner is contributing 10% to that economy. And in terms of like skills transfer and best practices from out there, I think they bring that here, and I think that has quite a bit of value. I do think sometimes they tend to overstay their welcomes in the sense of umetufunza toka. In the sense of a Kenyan should take up that job and should be paid exactly what you were paid. That's what I would like to see. Of course, they would be paid less, but still. But some of them do overstay their welcome.
Okay.
But I think they contribute quite a bit, particularly on the knowledge front. It's not to say that we can't go out there and get the knowledge. It's just that not all of the knowledge is not as spread out as it could be, and they help with that.
What have you learned from expatriates? I'm just curious.
I've learned quite a bit of data science. When I started out, there was an expatriate from Australia on our team, I believe.
Go Australia.
And through them also, I've learned we had a bunch of researchers who came from abroad. I learned that. I also learned that these people are not anything special. So, we will learn it and then they can leave. Or they don't have to leave, but, they
make room.
continue to we should be able to take up that space, and they should not be blocking it. And I think the Kenya government does a bit to ensure that happens. I know there was a time I was working in an NGO consulting, and they had to have people who, so that they could get their visas, they had to designate somebody who they were training to take over their jobs. And I don't know how, I know the rules are there, like with a lot of things in Kenya. I don't know how well informed it is, but I think technically they cannot stay for longer than 3 years, with the assumption being that you should have trained your replacement in 3 years. So either you've moved up into a new role or this, like, leave. I don't know how well enforced it is, but I know sometimes they're very strict about that. I've seen in certain co-working spaces, like, when they know when immigration is coming, they need to be very scarce because some of them are here on the wrong type of visas or have overextended their visas. So yeah.
Oh, well, so when you're thinking about expatriates, I think it's good also to expand it beyond technology.
Yeah.
Because if you look at our roads, are mostly built by Chinese. Reasons because we don't have that expertise to build those highways, and we tried that and we really messed up a lot. So
did we mess up for lack of expertise or because
just
of corruption?
My guy, those are two different.
No. It was not corruption. I remember the best example was there's a road in Meru where it's a corner. You take a corner, then you find a pole right in the middle of the road. The roads are being constructed by local contractors. Within 1 year or two, they're already needing a recarpeting for that. So we had a problem with the quality. But
isn't that people cutting corners and trying to? Yeah, it's corruption.
Forget that. If you wanted to dredge the port of Mombasa, first of all, the dredging equipment, we don't own it. You have to hire some equipment from Germany or China to do that. Mm-hmm. So essentially, the first need for having expertise was where the expatriates was where you lack the local capacity to do it. So you bring people who already know how to do it, and they do it for you. And if the government wants to have a skill transfer, then they keep them longer so that they can train the local people to take up that skill, and then they go. So expatriates were always a short-term gap into something you need fixed. Now, say that you overstayed their welcome. Sometimes they came in there and they realized, like, okay, I'm done with my whatever job. I'd like to stay here longer. Can I stay and work? I am not a big proponent of protectionism. Yeah. Reason being, protectionism weakens people, right? We should be able to be open enough so that if they're coming to take over our jobs, then we're like, oh, let's improve our universities, let's improve our trainings. If you look at all economies and what that crazy guy in Argentina is doing, he's like, protectionism has wrecked the Argentine economy. So anytime you protect your people, you're essentially making them weak. Expose them to the roughness of life. Let those foreigners come and take over the jobs, and let's freak out and figure out what we need to do so that we can be able to play at their skill level. Personally, I've learned a lot from expatriates. A lot. Just even attitude to work. Forget even the skill that they're to take. You realize that Chinese people, they don't have religion.
Yep.
They work Sunday. There's something called 8 to 6. I think it's 6 or something.
It's 996.
Whereby you work from 9 in the morning to 9 at night for 6 days a week. Mm-hmm. They almost don't know vacation. For us, we're like, work-life balance. And realize these people are driven like slaves. That's why their economy is growing so hard. So then you realize, okay, Spain is moving towards 4 days work week. China is working for 6 days a week. And then China will be giving loans to Spain and making their boats and dredging their things. So realize countries develop because people just work like crazy. Of course, sometimes it drives people to madness and killing themselves. Then I realized just the work attitude is very different. They go to the skills. If you think you have nothing to learn from somebody, then you've already lost it in life. Mm-hmm. Right? You've already lost it in life. Even if I go and work with somebody who's less skilled than me, I think there's something I learn. when cultures interact, that's where things blossom. That's where magic happens. That's you realize like, oh, if I take my traditional African beliefs, fuse it with some Manchurian feng shui thing, we can come up with something interesting. So let the expats come, in my case, open up the economy. Yeah. Japan for very many years, when they were still under feudal and whatever, was a very closed economy. They distrusted foreigners for that. And if you read the history of Japan going at 100, 150 years old, when they started to open up the society to allow foreigners to come and trade with them, that's when actually Japan started becoming a growing economy. Because like, oh, there's tea from China, blah, blah. You realize Japanese food is Chinese food. Almost everything. They took it and localized it and made it their own. If they never opened up their country to foreigners, there'll still be a traditional economy. Look at Russia. When Russia decided to become a communist state after the revolution, for many years it was a very agricultural society. Then they brought communism. And communism was all about control, until they realized this control thing doesn't work. We need to infuse... it's like you need to
capitalism and capitalistic thinking.
Yeah, we need capitalism in certain aspects in our and bring that crazy American, bring that crazy Brit guy. We might hate them, but they possess something that we need. Russia stole nuclear technology from the Germans after the World War. Americans also stole the nuclear technology and rockets from the Germans, right? If that interaction never happened, NASA won't be sending rockets to the moon, and Russia won't have nuclear weapons that they have. So once you lock yourself in, you die.
I agree completely. Even just to add an even more recent example, China.
Yeah.
Same thing. At some point, they grew, and then the emperor decided, this is the best place on earth. No more foreigners. And that's how they began their descent. Because
the current premier.
Not the current premier, but the emperor, not even Mao. Like
before. Back in the day, during the
back in the day, before they had what they call their great embarrassment or whatever it is, the one where the British were like, we're selling you drugs whether you like it or not, right? So that we can get your tea, right? The Opium Wars, yes. Yeah. So before that, right? Even before that, so technically for all of history, China has been the greatest nation on earth.
Yeah.
Right? The last 100 years or 200 years, or whatever you want to call it, is actually a blip when you look at history. But before that, they actually closed up and were like, we're not going to allow foreigners in. We're not going to develop. Everything is going to come from within here. And you look at that, they invented paper, and yet, knowledge transfer did not start there the way it should have, right? The scientific revolution. It's not to say they were not inventing things, but they were. But, one of the things that, even like the printing press and all of that does is just knowledge transfer. And those things, because they closed themselves up, it's only as they started to open themselves up in the last 40 years is that they've become getting back to what they consider and what even history might say is their rightful place as hegemons.
Yeah,
right? And so that lack of interaction. So for me, yes, I agree, no protectionism. The reason why I said what I said was because I feel like sometimes they do not make space.
Yeah. And that's where I agree with you, Sidney.
And you see, if you look at any culture right now, we can argue that Indians don't make space for Black Kenyans to get into certain things because they do things on their own, right? We can argue that. And to me, I don't see that as a problem, right? Because
I would argue that a counter immediately.
If I may counter that,
I'm not even going to let you finish.
If I may counter that,
if you look at the American companies, how many of them are run by Indians now?
Yeah,
they made space for them, and now their companies are $1 trillion companies because
let me
they are
add
being
this.
run
Let me
by
add this.
Indians.
Let me add this. During
They agree, Sydney. Make space.
When what is his name? Genghis Khan was busy conquering Asia. I think I was reading somewhere where someone asked him, "Why don't you go conquer Europe?" So then he asked, "What is there in Europe?" That time Europe was like Africa. People were sleeping with their horses in the same house. It was a derelict place. He wanted to conquer some place of essence, right?
Uh-huh.
Now, what made Europe become this thing? Europe ended up bringing things from Asia China, everywhere. It became the melting pot of everything else because it was an open society. So that if a Chinese guy, gunpowder was invented in China.
Yes.
But where did it have the most impact? Europe, people fighting wars. Because they're like, oh, there's this thing I saw in China. Let's bring it here. Paper. Europeans had nothing, right? But because the only thing they did was to create an open society where anyone could come and do whatever they want and interact with all those things, right? And America is also another example where you come in.
Yeah, but after they took those things, they did not then let the Chinese run those things.
But you see now
they took it and allowed space for their own.
No,
people.
these are two things. These are two things. First of all,
blocking people.
First of all, there is where do you want to create an environment where things blossom? That's one, right?
Yeah.
If you read the rise and decline of empires starts declining with protectionism, right?
Indeed.
You're like, oh, we've built this great thing. We've built this great economy, right? Then now you're like, okay, we want to protect it, which means you start making your people less competitive. Then someone else comes and upshoot, I don't know, Brazil comes up and like, oh, we have a way of beating these guys, right? So I don't deny that people start to protect, because once you have, someone says, if you're a chokora, you really don't care about anything. You don't care about your reputation. But once you start becoming Sydney and a data scientist, now you're like, I have to dress properly. You start protecting whatever you have.
I have some things to share, but I'd like you to elaborate about the mixed space narrative.
Oh, yeah. So when I'm talking about make space, it's when I say overstay your welcome also, it's like because you were there is no space for somebody to take up that role, right? That's what I worry about. And I also worry about the protection thing. I don't know. I don't know how to create a balance where, for example, I come and teach you data, right? I come into your company, teach you data, right? And then once you've learned, there's no space for you to grow, right?
But
and generally what happens...
I think that's a fallacy.
In that case, fallacy. You end up leaving the company so that you can take over the role that...
Let me tell you why that's a fallacy.
Yeah.
When Kenya gained independence, right? We were joking with one of my friends that he was telling his grandfather would say that back in the day, 1920s, 1930s, if you go like deep into Siaya over there, you'd find like an Indian with a dukkha selling, right? Mm-hmm. So then you're asking like, why don't we have them right now? So I came to trace that after 1965, Tom Mboya created what we call the Africanization program. It was supposed to exclude Indians and white people from, number one, operating smaller jobs in rural areas. Indians were not supposed to have any civil servant job. They are excluded for almost everything. And all those, let's call them, opportunities were left to Africans for that. If you fast track 50 years later, right now, as a population, who's doing better, right? The Africans, the space was created for them, like run the dukkas, civil servant jobs
but
are yours.
We were not ready to run the dukkas.
But you see, the problem was even in Haiti. In Haiti, when they kicked out the French, right? They realized we know nothing about running farms. We don't learn nothing about running large-scale farms. What they did, they rehired the French people that they kicked like, okay, we will be in government, but you'll run the farms, right? Now, whoever ended up benefiting a lot because now they can like, okay, now you'll pay me $1 million because I know the market, I know the insurance of shipping this sugar and everything else. So when you're saying like people don't create space, if you totally believe in an open society and open markets are not comfortable and they're not supposed to be comfortable, right? Mm-hmm. The reason why you're not taking this person's job is because your competence has not gotten to the level of taking their job. Or this guy has some other skills or networks or influence that you don't have. So instead of saying we need to kick this guy out to take their job, what do I need to add?
But I don't think he's saying kick them out. I think he's saying after a while, I mean, you should have like a continuity plan. Like Wangari, I'm now giving Sydney should be able to take... Like after all, I can get another job anywhere else. Like,
I would say upskill Sid to the level whereby if we are considering a CEO,
take him. Yeah.
Put him. Not by default, right? I would say okay. You know, watch world politics. No, you're getting in the realm of politics.
No, I don't think
people will prefer having of their own type.
I actually have a real example. I once worked for a FMCG, we're not mentioning names, a decade ago. Right?
Yeah.
Based somewhere in Lavington. So you find the expatriate team. So imagine this is the regional office for a lot of countries in Africa.
Yeah.
90% I was in that office. 90% of the staff, because the regional office, were mostly expatriates.
Okay.
For jobs that you're just like, Yani, you brought someone from the Netherlands to come and manage a vending machine. Let me finish. That's that.
Okay.
And then what they would do, because the security guy would tell us, those days, I think it was, I don't know, Kajwang or something was they would renew the contracts of the permit. So what you'd find is a lot of these guys would come, were not anti, but then they don't even, the skills, let me finish. They don't even, there was no transfer skills. The people who are doing all the work, okay, are the locals. The pay disparity is so high. So you're like, at least even that pay disparity, at least if you had like some other superior skills where I'm like, every day I go to work, even if you're earning 6 times as much, I'm like, at least I'm learning these skills.
Do you believe in open markets?
I believe in open market. And let me finish. And you're also looking at a market, because this is not America.
Yeah, Chris.
You also look at a market where you have unemployment of 50%. So you have high unemployment.
And educated people.
Okay. You're not creating a structure to allow these people to get into these jobs where these guys...
I think this has been one of the most sung things out here. I'm looking for good data to debunk it, where like, okay, foreigners are taking over our jobs, right? Even in the UK, when all those Polish people and Eastern Europeans come in, they're like, oh, part of Brexit was because...
Chris, I don't think they're taking over jobs. I think it's like at a certain level. You never see them like doing like kazi ya mkono stuff. Honestly.
Right now, if you go to Kisumu, the people who are vending kahawa, mandazi, and other things are Burundians and Rwandese, right? Someone's like, oh, these guys are coming here to take our opportunities, right? But you were just busy there sitting without having that push to do that into it. I feel that thing that they're taking our jobs, I'm still looking for very good data to debunk it, because I don't think it makes sense. Because if you... It doesn't make sense. Look at it. If you start a company today, right? Whatever, processing sisal, right? You'll start employing your village mates, people you care about. So-and-so doesn't have a job, right? You'll give them job, right? But you're denying that Luya, you're denying that Luo a fair chance at that job. You'll always start employing people of your own, right? It is natural, right? Those Netherlands, it's just because they are white. That's why, because you feel antagonized. There is a theory that says that the more someone is detached from you from a genetics perspective, the more animosity there is. If it was all Kikuyus taking the jobs, you'd be like,
no, but I'm not anti.
Do I want to say this? We're not
anti.
We're not anti
expatriates.
Yeah, we're not anti-expatriates. I don't know.
Yeah,
then why is it a problem?
Chris once would like, if you was told, Chris, we'll make you white today, I think Chris.
No. I think people mistake something, right? People mistake something. If I look at myself, the things I love about Japanese people, the things I like about Chinese people, the things I like about white people, the things I like about black people, right? Sometimes most of the things I like probably come from white people, right? Because
we know that.
They've evolved their culture and everything else. Then I'm like, oh shit, I hate this about them. They're not communal people, right? They're individuals. But I go somewhere like, I love where people live as a community. If you're truly an open person, right? You imbibe whatever you think makes sense to you, right?
For sure.
And that makes it very easy for someone to label you, or you like white people, or you like Chinese people, you hate your own culture,
I
right?
hate that argument, by the way.
You can decide to become bigoted and say, to me, I'm a Luo supremacist. Anything that is not Luo, I don't like. And there was a lady who was on Twitter, which I thought, she said something which was a bit stupid. She said, like, this year I'm only reading books by black authors. I'm like, get knowledge. That is the important thing. Read Chinese literature, read white literature, read whatever gives you knowledge. But once you've boxed yourself into, like, I only read black people, I think...
But maybe she has a reason for that, Chris.
No, I think that's stupid. Human experience...
It depends on what you're trying to do. I can't dismiss it out of hand like that.
I would dismiss it out of hand because at the end of the day, you want human experience. Sometimes you think like a Korean guy living in the mountains is so different than you chilling Mirai in Meru. You might find that you have actually a lot of things in common, right?
True.
So, by just saying you're reading black people, you're already excluding so much knowledge that has been there for thousands of years.
But what you might be saying is, I've read white people for the last 20 years. Let me get some black people in there.
That's okay.
That's what she wanted.
No, she just said, if you read a further thread, it's like that, people misuse this saying by Chinua Achebe that as long as the hunter
tells the story, you'll...
Yeah, it will always the story will always glorify the ant. So like anything written by a white person is always malicious. That's the point. Then I'm like,
so that's what you... Okay,
so when-
I disagree with that, but still.
So we want to read the history of Kenya, right? The most initial books were written by white people because we never used to write. So someone is telling you discount all that there's nothing written by a white person that makes sense. I was like, if you are a sensible person, read whatever you want, then be a judge. When you can figure out this person is veering towards too much.
Yeah, we're not for woke ideology here, obviously.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
but you're going toward wokeness when
How?
you start.
How?
Protectionism is
It's not
wokeness.
But I don't think we're
protectionism.
talking about protectionism.
We're not talking
I
about
think
protectionism.
It's that balance.
My question then was like,
Chris, it's a balance.
your problem with 90% of the staff being white, it was that there's a Kenyan who has been denied that opportunity. That is your take on that.
No, it's that Kenyans can do the job.
Yeah.
That these white people can
Yes.
do, right?
Yeah.
That already is protectionism. Because what
How?
you're saying, let me say, if a Chinese guy moved from China and find him harvesting sugarcane in Muhoroni for that, you'd be like, no, would you say like, oh, there is someone in the village who actually deserves this job than that Chinese?
No.
Okay, but Chris, I think coming back to his, and again, this is where I tap into like working like in Australia, there were policies and regulations. Like 90% is something you cannot do.
But that's protectionism.
It's not protectionism.
it is.
It's we talked about this. It's about equal opportunity.
Yeah.
Making sure
There
that
it
is
is.
what it is.
We want equal opportunity,
It's
not
equal
equal
opportunity.
outcome. So
Yeah.
I'm not
we're not saying...
Yeah, there
I
has
think-
to be
I
a
think-
ratio.
okay,
What's
yeah,
a ratio?
thank you. I finally gotten it. So,
Okay.
right, what he was talking about with 90%.
Yeah,
right?
that's quite high.
What he was saying, or what I believe happened, was that there was not opportunity
Yeah.
for Africans to take that job. We're not saying that they must, right?
Yeah.
You see, it's the same thing of like how you're like everybody can apply to Harvard, right?
Yeah.
But not everybody will get in, right? Which is fine. But if we find out that the people who are getting into Harvard were exactly as skilled as the people who are not getting into Harvard, but only got in because of, and by the way, let's not even talk about like maybe their fathers donated millions of dollars, or you went to that school, therefore your kid goes to that school. No, none of that. Those are connections. Just literally based off this
Merit.
guy is named, no, not even merit. This guy is named John White. Na mtu mwingine anaitwa this weird
Chris Orwa.
no, the ones Americans come up with the weirdest names. Black Americans, right?
Shaniqua.
Shaniqua. Let's say Shaniqua. Just based off that, right? That is not equal access to opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's
And
the
I think,
problem.
Chris, that's what you're trying to
that's
say, yeah.
So that's I'm not against if equal number of Americans and Kenyans applied for the thing. Or no, let's say an American applied for a job and 10 Kenyans applied, and the American got it.
And I gave the
And we
example.
looked, and we
I
looked.
gave the example that if you was to start a sisal milling plant,
It's fine, but at some
and
point
people apply,
he
people that are his type will end up becoming majority.
which is
They-
fine.
they want to be a
But you see,
filter that
that's
says-
the thing.
The only
Remember
place
we
where that
started
is
this
supposed to be.
discussion?
Wait. Why are you making that assumption?
No,
And
it's
again,
fine.
but again,
It's a
remember,
fine.
no, it's not a
We
fact.
started
Stephen
this
has been
discussion.
exposed. He
Wait,
knows
why-
better.
I won't only hire my relatives.
Yeah, why would you
Why
do
are you
that?
just making
Maybe I would
assumptions?
like me. I'm hiring my relatives, but still,
People would lie.
we're talking
First
about
of all,
equal access to
one of the
opportunity.
It's about-
not
one of the
equal
training-
access to outcome.
No, let me tell you, one of the things that I was ever told that I went for some training, some spiritual thing where I was being detoxed about who I am. So
Buddhist meditation.
What were you doing?
It was a Buddhist
I
meditation.
was told, number one thing, the problem that I was most likely to do when I'm hiring people, I tend to hire people who are like me. Like
Absolutely. You have that bias. Yeah.
Yeah, I like people who are crazy. If
Indeed.
I find someone who's well put in a suit,
Wait, why
I
did you
wouldn't
hire
hire
me?
them.
Yeah.
I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if someone tells me like their hobby is sniffing people's socks, then I'm like, oh yeah, this guy can do something, right? When you start hiring, unconsciously you start to hire people who are like you. In the very general sense, you start hiring people from your own tribe, but you don't do that. You start hiring black people. You start hiring people who have computer science degrees. So you start putting people who tend to be like you in some way, right? That's bias that we all have. In government is where government is mandated to balance. Like if that's why when they're recruiting police officers, there has to be like 10 from each county or 50 from each county, because that regional balance is very important.
But I
the
guess
discussion here is about equal opportunity and giving people access. You talked about the power dynamic.
Yeah.
So if a lot of capital is coming into this market, a lot of countries even have local provisions. Why is it difficult for me?
Let me
finish. Why is it difficult for me to relocate right now if I want to move to Germany, France, South Africa, Canada? I won't just get a job. There's so many criteria I would have to fulfill.
I'm not saying there are no criteria. I am saying this, right?
And it's based on local talent person get the job
even
before we bring in
Steve. But even remember countries like Germany, right? At some point, they're like, okay, our people are becoming too stupid. They open up their visa thing. They're like, okay, we are willing to take 100K people from this, because they realize what I'm saying is that protectionism makes your people weaker and dumber. Then you realize like, oh, think America. Right, you hear like they have to take Mexicans to come and harvest.
What's wrong with saying if you're opening a business here, 70% local provision, 30% for anyone you want?
What I'm saying is
what's wrong with that?
Yeah, what is wrong with that?
Okay, let me tell you. It goes back to philosophy. It goes back to my philosophy. My philosophy.
I didn't know you have a philosophy. Welcome.
You have a 30% provision to hire everyone else.
No. I'm just saying. I'm saying my personal philosophy.
It's his.
Mine.
Right?
Yeah. It's about open societies, right? You can read about the European philosopher called Hegel and about open societies, right? You can believe in an open society, a semi-open society, and a closed society, right? Reason because those countries create those quotas is because of voters, for not for any other reasons.
Yep.
So that they can please their voters. Like if you look at Britain and Brexit, we can't vote you in government and then tomorrow we don't have jobs, and then you're opening the border for all those poor Polish people who are willing to work for $5 an hour who will come and take over our jobs. Then the government at that time like, oh, if we don't please these voters, we'll be out of government. So like, we have closed our border. Brexit is now in place. That's not a philosophy. That's about voting and politics. That's why I say that's politics. When you believe in true openness, right? The idea is that right now there's someone who's 10 times better than me, right? Mm-hmm. If you are put on a foot together to compete, he'll outdo me, right? Mm-hmm. But I need to earn a living. So let me shut him off to earn a living. But in the most ideal scenario, I'm supposed to upskill myself to the level whereby I can compete with him.
And things have changed.
And that's fine.
Things have changed with the online education and learning and skills.
When you talk about online skills, we can only talk about tech, right? Let me ask you. Will you learn nursing on YouTube?
You can learn how to build financial models.
I was watching a very funny documentary.
Yeah.
It's about South Africa. So South Africa has like, especially Joburg and those, they call them townships. Violence is so crazy that every day, people who have been struck with a panga, hit with a tool.
We're in Pretoria. Where?
Joburg.
Mm-hmm.
In Joburg. Mm-hmm. Now, European, I think it's Australia or UK, I might mix them. Their trauma surgeons get trained in South Africa. Yeah. Because back in the countries, people don't hack each other, right? Mm. So now they stand an agreement that there's a hospital somewhere, I don't know where it is. It's a neighborhood. It's like a hospital next to Kibera that every night they receive like 20 people have been hacked. Half of them will die in this, right? It's because they don't have access to people who have been hacked. That's why they need to go there. If they closed their borders and said, oh, those nurses can go learn from YouTube or how a trauma looks like, it'll never happen. They have to open up and say like, okay, it's a problem.
But Chris, and also vice versa. No, I remember there was a time, like a brother, I can say a brother, got, was it malaria? Yeah. And went to the UK. Yeah. These guys don't know what that is.
Yeah, yes. Because they've never been.
So it goes both ways. We can't
because
be,
now those
and as you said,
those UK doctors,
they don't know what malaria is.
I feel like we agree.
Those UK doctors then need to have like an exchange program.
Exactly.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
I think we agree. Because I'm also pro-open.
Yeah, we're all pro-open, but it needs to go both ways. I think what's interesting.
And also build your own capacity, local capacity.
We're all pro-open.
And there has to be demonstration you're doing so.
Because it can't go the other way. Because the other countries, the very good example, the new Burkina Faso, the guy who took over from a military coup, right? There was a Russia-Africa summit, Then he went there, and then the bilateral talks. And then he's like, oh, we'd like to have a nuclear power plant here. You know, Russia has that technology. And then in exchange, they're willing to export mangoes to Russia.
Chris, are you a guy for you stay in your lane? This is just the life, how life dealt with you, and just
No.
know
What
your
I'm
place.
saying, when you're coming to negotiate,
You have to have aspiration.
come with something substantial. You can't come want mangoes for nuclear reactors.
Okay,
The thing is that
can we get the next question, please? Because
nuclear reactors cost a certain number of
question.
mangoes.
no, Russians.
I think, they contribute to diversity. Obviously, expatriates will bring in a lot more. They make cities more cosmopolitan.
Yeah.
They bring in their own, cultural attributes, whether it's the foods, the kind of culture, music, and just other social aspects. So I think that's good. Africans are already grounded in their norms and beliefs. So I don't see any negative influence. In fact, it's a positive for me. So
Gayism.
No, please.
So
Why are you gay?
So for me, it's a net positive.
I really thought you'd go with net negative.
You say the greatest cultures in the world
Diversity
have
is
been
unity.
fusions. If you look at any great culture in the world, there is power in isolation, whereby it allows you to develop something unique, right? And then you have another isolated somewhere. And then the reason why cities are still the best places to live is because that's where you get to interact with different types of people. I remember watching many years back, like 10 years ago, there's some guy from the UN who said, the best city to live in is what you find what you're not looking for, right? Because there's diversity, there's different things. You wake up and find, some transvestite who only kills male people. And you're like, oh my God! Wow! Man, this is insanity.
Welcome to Chris, yeah.
So, some crazy things like that. But a good city is where you find different things. Now, expatriates will, you rightly say, they'll bring their own history, their culture, they'll set up different things. And you could find, if you looked at Kenya 100 years ago when the Indians came in, we love chapati. The Indians are the ones who brought chapatis to us.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. If you go and eat biryani, those are the Arabs who came to the coast and brought biryani. So, and if you look even the cultural aspects, some societies are polite societies. So we learn politeness from them. We learn aggressiveness from other societies. So to me, I was like, yes, they have a net positive. Yeah. I know in South Africa with their crazy xenophobia, where they feel foreigners are taking more than. And Malema said, you'll never find a black South African saying like, oh, these white people from England, let them go away. These white people from Australia, they'll attack the weak Nigerians and Zimbabweans who are there. And Malema was like, if you really hate foreigners, hate the white people. Don't hate your fellow black a person. You have more in common than that other white person. So I find it to be very pretentious to talk about that you hate foreigners. If you look at societies where foreigners have injected crime, right? And in South Africa, that's the claim they make. In Kenya, I don't think we tend to have less. Actually, Kenya has a lot of Rwandese and Burundians, and they play on the law.
Yeah.
Right? They don't complain. And I think they've injected, every time I go to Twitter, people say like, oh, my Kinyozi is a Burundi guy. Or my, I don't know what is a Rwandese guy. And they've gelled very well. And maybe in the next 10, 20 years, we might feel that net positive. And one of the things that if you study societies for a very long time, natives tend to be very complacent. At some point, there's certain jobs they don't want to do.
Yeah.
Right? So America is a very good example. No one wants to go and harvest oranges in the farm. It's considered a Mexican job. So now you're forced to hire, even I think the states along the border are allowed to bring in, during harvest season, to bring in certain, mostly Mexicans to harvest, and they go back. Now, these foreigners, if we consider, because to me foreigners is not just white people. It's Ugandans, Tanzanians, Rwandese, Burundians, Somali. Look at Somali people and Isili. I'm quite sure a good number of people are not Somali Kenyans. But they've really...
They're very enterprising.
Yeah.
And they've built a lot of businesses here.
Yeah,
agreed.
They've really injected
A lot of capital.
a lot of capital in our economy.
Yeah.
So if you were to look at the negatives and the positives, to me, I think the positives outweigh the negatives. Right now, I can go eat Somali food, some ngamia milk, and some. I have more choices of things to do. Now, the biggest mall in Kenya now is in Sili.
Yeah.
Because of the Somali.
What's the name? Garissa?
BRSS, I think.
Yeah.
It's called BRSS. It's massive. It's because of the Somali community. And a good chunk, I don't have the numbers, probably came from Somali to Kenya. So if you think of culture as a dynamic thing, right? Well, we're doing that Luo thing. 500 years ago, Luo never existed. Luo was a fusion of the Nuers and the Madi tribes, right? And maybe in the next 100, 200 years, it will not exist. Culture is a dynamic thing. If you stick to like, I'm a staunch Kikuyu, I'm a staunch Luya, blah, 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 you eventually get taken away by time because even these tribes, as we call them, in the next 5 generations, our children probably won't be speaking our native tribes. They'll be only speaking Kiswahili. If you look at the UK was made up of so many tribes, which ended up gelling.
But remember also those our arbitrary divisions.
Yeah.
So it's not us who created them.
Yeah.
To be clear.
And I think,
To be
Chris, to
clear.
add on to that, your question around culture and diversity, like I consider Africans, like we are culturally all the same. Like, you know, we have... Like there's but culturally when I go to Uganda I feel like home, like unless you really know and you start talking you're like, oh, you're Kenyan, but like we're very much the same. So I think in terms of that
I would like to add something to that. Yeah, there's a friend, we were driving somewhere to Nyeri, and then of course this Kikuyu Luo arguments that come up. I know Luos just love cars and houses, Kikuyus invest in businesses. Then he told me, dude, that was 20 years ago. Right now, we have Kikuyus, a lot of them behaving like Luos, where they just want to buy cars, live in big mansions and not care about anything. Which means they're evolving or they're copying other people.
Yeah.
Right? So when, if we look at 100, 200 years ago, the reason why Uganda feels like Kenyans because we're operating in the same environment. Then inject now the white people. Now, there'll be Ugandans who will take the negative traits and, something just came to mind, which was perfect. Charlie Manga, his comment about Indians. I don't know whether... So he said, by and large, Indians are great people. But when they brought in capitalism, they copied the worst side of capitalism.
The protectionist
The
side.
protectionist side of it. So if you inject a fresh culture, there are people who will take up different parts of that culture. That's why in Islam you have those radical Muslims, and then you find like a very polite, very person with mannerism. And then this Muslim guy will also interact with an Indian who will interact with a Sudanese, and then something else comes up, right? So in the next 100 to 200 years, what you considered African culture would have evolved
For sure.
and become some nasty
it's
ass thing.
Yeah.
This is the one question I think we all agree, because even me, I'm just like, culture mixing is good.
No, I think
diversity and inclusion,
diversity
of course.
is good, but I think for me, my caveat, and I consider all Africans as one. So you say we are different. I'm like, in Africa, like we're all kind of
I want to hear this
we're
caveat.
kind of, for me,
Go
like
to-
I think
I want-
culturally, and this is again comes back to my experience living outside of Kenya for a very long time. I take the good and leave the bad. Like I know what's good for me as a person, as an African, as a black
So
woman.
a Pokot and a Luya are like good.
Culturally, you're kind of
You'll
like
find
the same.
a Pokot
Yeah, there's
marrying a
differences.
10-year-old is okay. And then you
Which
go...
is why,
like seriously, you've gone to the extreme.
yeah,
extreme.
but which is why we said we want to take the good parts. We want to take the good food.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, the
There's some
chapati.
practices that I don't
You see
think,
what? You see what?
like as
When- when-
Africans,
when-
we
take
should
the
be
chapatis
doing.
and all that and leave the bases behind.
When you marry somebody,
We want to take.
when you marry
what do the
someone,
Pokots do? I think they do beautiful beadwork. We want to take that and
just-
we leave the
See
child
what-
marriage back to
Yeah,
back.
exactly.
Take the best
You see
of
what?
all.
We're going to take the best.
When
You
you,
take the best.
when you marry somebody, you don't marry their good side. You marry their good side
For
and
sure.
their bad side.
But what you
Next
fuse,
question.
what you
Next
fuse
question.
with your kids,
Man,
is
this
just the
thing
good
will be
side.
3 hours. You guys, if you
I'm glad you agreed on something.
yeah.
How about you do an experiment? Mm-hmm. We have one country that is very strict on its policies about foreigners, another one which is extremely loose on foreigners.
So Tanzania and Kenya.
And then we check these countries after 20 years. And we check culture, we check economy, we check crime rate, we check harmony. And like an A/B test of sort. And we can do a thought experiment on that. Tanzania,
So we come back after 20 years to...
No, since we can't do that experiment right now, we start to argue whether what do you think the outcomes would be? My hunch is that when colonialists came in Kenya and Africa and created all these rules that only benefit them, yeah, that was the problem. Let's assume there was a blending, the way our tribes
assimilated,
blend. Luo gets assimilated to a Luya, Kalenjin gets assimilated. I think it could be a net positive.
I agree.
Right? Mm-hmm. Immediately you start creating very stringent rules. E.g., suppose TZ during Magufuli, they put very stringent rules on foreigners, even Kenyans.
Yeah.
On that. I remember there was a Tanzanian MP who said he lives at Hispania, that area, that TZ area around Hispania, and he said, why are you forcing me to buy expensive cement that is manufactured in Tanzania?
When I can get
Yet across the border, there's very cheap cement from Kenya. Open up the borders. Let me buy where I feel I should buy.
Yeah.
Right? The reason why rules, like the African government creates these stringent rules, was to protect them from exploitation from foreigners and other people. But I think only stupid people get exploited, or weak people get exploited.
Okay, thank you for saying that.
Right?
What?
Because, as Sebo like saying,
but okay,
why?
Chris, define strength and weakness. I think we've talked about...
Let's say our economy.
Yeah.
Okay, let's start from...
I think if you had to consider weakness, all Africans are weak because we have no money.
Yes, and that's
Full
the thing.
stop. Yeah.
Why don't we have money? Let's go back there.
Where's the blame Ruto button?
There are very stupid things we do. Someone said, why can't East Africa be very cheap? The way Europe, you can fly for $30 or $20 anywhere in Europe. It will increase the number of people flying.
Yeah.
It will increase economy around those airports. Those are things Kenya, UGTZ can sit down and say, we are cutting off all the fees. If you buy a ticket from here to UG, it's about $35K.
$30,
Right? Mm-hmm. Almost half of that is taxes, landing fees, blah, 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 blah. Because each country government sees this is a way of us ripping off from the other people, right? That rip-off mentality is there. So you start becoming weak. Anytime you start becoming too protectionism, I still go back to that. Being weak means you don't have money.
Yeah.
You don't have knowledge.
But
right?
that's number one is just like you don't have money. Root cause of all that is you
don't
have no money.
So how can you make more money? Right? So that if anyone comes, you can negotiate at like you Americans, we can fund our roads. If you want, we can give you agriculture to do our roads. We will build. We have enough money to build our own roads. And since we have our own money, we will decide who to hire. We can hire Kenyans. But once Americans come with their money, they can start dictating who you hire. Otherwise, we go when the LGBTQ law was passed in UG, and they're like, we are independent, Ugandans, blah blah blah. Then Americans, what did they decide? They're like, okay,
pull out all this.
No, they told USAID, pull out all HIV treatment things. Now, Museveni sent his son-in-law to go ahead and talk about it.
We just do these things.
Then you were told that law has been taken back to Parliament for repealing or for looking at that.
We will have our morals. We will protect our children. And we are making this law. We are making this law for ourselves. We are making this law for our children. We are making this law for the children of our children. This country will stand firm. And once it passed, I can tell you, Madam Speaker, we are going to reinforce the law enforcement officers to make sure that homosexuals have no space in Uganda.
Because you are weak. Once you become weak, you're exploitable.
Yeah.
Right? So the only question you should ask yourself, how do I become stronger?
Yeah, and we have to separate between also a bit like when you think about foreign capital at a macro level, where you talk about like businesses or corporations investing directly and like at a micro level where you're talking like about an expat, because of course you're absolutely correct. Any economy that needs to thrive has to be open.
Yeah.
Like when you look at Kenya right now, we're becoming very, what do you call inward? In terms of...
At this point, I would like to blame Ruto.
Ruto blame button, I told you.
Yeah.
The Ruto blame button.
No. If you blame Ruto, which means you have to blame the voters who put him there.
Yeah, because of poverty.
Of course I do.
Yeah,
Anyway,
but
just
it's
continue.
sorry.
Yeah, so of course that then doesn't work, because it's interesting that you're like, not to get political, but your president says taxes have never killed anyone. But when you look at the country that defaulted in December 2 years ago, was Ghana. Ghana has one of the highest taxes in the continent.
Yeah,
that's just a clear demonstration.
Would you have higher FDI if you have you have a very protected economy?
No.
And foreign direct investment is important. We'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it now.
Even foreign direct investment, I'm pro, let all the foreigners in. It is fine. We will figure it out. They bring a lot of good things. It may start out a bit hard, but eventually it's a net benefit. So generally, I think the government could even do more to encourage expatriates to come in. I think we are trying to strike a balance also politically, so that such that we don't become those people who are like, these people are taking our jobs.
But let me ask you, isn't it making the government very lax?
In the sense of?
Like they're just relying on foreign investments, and here it's just like...
So you see, the thing is,
no country...
if you open up the borders generally, right? I do not think there'll be such an influx that they will be like, oh, these guys are now 50% of our revenue. In fact, what has happened is that so many of us have seen, again, I'm going to blame Ruto, because it's his government. Anyway, so many of us have seen what Ruto is doing, right? And the direction we're heading, right? And we're heading out. And the government is seeing, hey, but these people, because of course we don't head out for good. We head out and send back. Right now, in terms of foreign exchange, after agriculture, it is literally people sending money back.
No, actually,
right? And that's why this government is like, oh, I'm going out there to look for jobs. What he means is, I'm exporting you so that I don't have to deal with your shit, but you can still fund my government.
Correction. If diaspora remittance is number one.
Oh, it is number one.
Way more than agriculture.
And tea and coffee,
it is like, it's here and tea and coffee.
And then tourism is like, what happened to
tourism?
Exactly.
And so you see, the government... he claims he's flying around looking for jobs, but what he means is, I want you to go there, make money.
I mean, that logic is so circular.
While that government deals with your shit, and you don't deal with my shit, and
you just send money
back, right? Yeah. And so I don't have to work here. In fact, we need more foreigners so that more of us so that they can create businesses, so that more of us can come back and hold this government to account. So generally, I'm net. In fact, now that we are visa free, let them come, let them start businesses.
Let's be a rainbow nation.
Yeah,
let's make yellow, black,
let's
green
all
babies.
join, because we cannot be the ones going to be, as I decide to call them, going to be expats out there, and then we're sending money back, and now the government is generally unaccountable because you're over there getting healthcare for free from another government, right? Of course you're paying taxes there, but you're sending money back, and they don't have to deal. So generally, in fact, I was going to say we are okay.
So we all go.
We need to open up more so that more business can come here. If they want to hire foreigners, it may be painful in the beginning. But yes, we'll be their maids but we'll see how they run those businesses and be like, but I can do that and go start our own.
When you think of foreign now, no, I'm not talking about now individual expatriates. When you look at like foreign capital, foreign direct investment, how many multinationals do you have in Kenya? Now, if you're to tell me multinationals as a percentage of Kenya's GDP, that will be very substantial, because when you look at all the banks, when you look at all the FMCG companies, these are all foreign owned. But then the contingency of the workforce is like 90% Kenyan. So if you go to Citigroup or Standard Chartered or ABSA or GE or Microsoft, so that's good. That's of course a net positive, because you're creating jobs. Taxes, the few expatriates who will work will also pay taxes. So, of course, foreign direct investment and allowing foreign businesses to come and set up and produce goods and services and hire the local contingent. Any country that wants to succeed must have a favorable foreign direct investment policy. That's a given. That's a standard.
And now, hence, let's assume we have a scenario where everyone in the economy, at least the natives, have jobs.
Natives.
Yeah,
You've been reading a lot of colloquial history, yeah?
That's his history.
I just call it what it is.
Native sounds so...
I know, I'm like, why are you calling us natives?
You can call them indigents,
It's
which is what
indigenous.
Nigerians use. They have indigents and foreigners, but they usually talk about that between states.
A very good example is Qatar.
Everyone has a job.
And UAE. No, because Qatar, I think right now they're about 1.2 million.
Yeah.
And Qataris are only 150K.
Yeah.
Yeah, the actual natives, the Qataris, are around 50K. The rest are foreigners.
Yeah.
So they said, you know what? Come in, work, do whatever you want. The only thing we won't give you citizenship.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah. You come here, do your thing. If you walk to Doha, your chances of meeting a Qatari is like so slim. You're meeting a Chinese guy, Indonesian, Indian, Italian, Kenyans. It's full
because
of
there are not many. There are 1.2 million and the economy needs to be sustained somehow.
So you see, there are countries which said, okay, we need these people.
Yeah, there are 1.2 only.
20 years ago, 30 years ago, Qatar was a fishing village.
Yeah.
Just at some dry desert, right? But they didn't say like, okay, now they discovered oil. So they structured their economy because if you are a citizen, you get some money every year. There's some benefits you get as being a citizen. So the only thing they said, we won't give you citizenship. Because if a war broke out between natives and foreigners, they'll be down 1 to 10 almost to that, right? So they've done that very well, right? And actually, most citizens don't work because you only work if you want.
Yeah, the
right?
country is rich as hell.
Yeah.
Now, support them, all of them.
Now, let's come back to Kenya, right? Where the natives have no jobs.
Yeah.
Right?
And we're 56 million, not 1.2.
Yes. Now,
Remember
the animosity comes from them not having jobs, not that you're anti-foreigners.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The reason why you're regulating and saying you can only allow... That's a political thing. But from a philosophical perspective, it is good to have these people. It is good to... Because how would a Qatari who was herding goats in the desert know about building a skyscraper that's 50 floor up, set up a railway line, build an airport, and all that, right? Their policemen are Egyptians and other Arabs from other policemen. In Kenya, policeman has to be a Kenyan. Just because, we're protecting this. If we become as rich as Qatar, we won't have a problem hiring Ugandan rebels in the north to come and become policemen in Kenya. So I usually say that if something can be solved by money, it's not a problem, right? So we have a money problem, right? That's why we have all these rules. Like, government has to set work permit. They shouldn't do anything like work permit. As long as you're qualified and you want to come here and these are the laws of the country, come and work, right? But because now we want to raise revenue from taxes, right now I don't know how much. I think it was bumped up to like 200K or something.
But Chris, what's the flip side of work permits for people like me going to a country like, say, the UK?
UK is heavily protection.
Yeah, it's very, very, even gotten worse.
Even America, you can't work in America if you don't have PR.
Yeah, and
Australia.
What I'm saying is that what is the net effect of that protectionism after 50 years?
Yeah.
UK right now,
it's declining.
It's declining so fast.
And they've even made it worse. I saw he made like...
And you see, as much as we say the Americans are protectionists, they do have like a visa lottery where they just allow a few 100,000 people every year.
Green
Randomly.
card. And
remember, I don't know if there's any other nation that has anything like that.
That's pretty
almost
horrible
80,
in my
90
opinion,
years
but
ago. 80, 90 years ago, 1920s. US never had visa. As long as you show up in the border, you're allowed to get
Enter.
it. Right?
And you're now American.
Yeah, because also at that time they needed the West Coast, the Midwest to be populated. And even that time, you are told, whatever you can clear becomes yours. So you just take a slasher, you clear 3 acres, it's yours. Of course, they were encouraging settlement in those areas. But that time, there was nothing like visa, there was nothing like work permit. You show up in the border, right? Another thing that has complicated things is terrorism, because now you need to monitor who's coming in and out of your country. Then we want to regulate all that. So that complicated things a little bit. But just from assuming all those problems were not there, things like visa, work permits should not be
But I
existing.
think the template also is a lot of these countries that comparisons, you have to realize that these are also countries that are very wealthy. Okay?
Yeah.
If you look at the United States and Qatar and all these countries, are countries that have resources. So when you look at now the broke guys, like in Eastern Europe or Latin America or most of Africa, including other African countries, when you're thinking about what they will be a bit protectionist.
Apart from that, remember, like Kenyan government has just told us that those work permits and visa is a way of raising money, right? So I might want to be open, but I have no money to pay teachers. I have no money to pay soldiers.
But it's so the problem there is like a short term.
Yes.
Looking at revenue now versus what somebody coming in would be able to bring.
Ideally.
So
you're supposed to encourage business and tax those businesses.
Exactly. Yes. At the end of the day, it's
not an ID is what you're looking to raise money.
Yeah,
from.
it's ridiculous.
Because everybody needs an ID or a passport, whatever it ends up being. So I don't know. I feel like for this one, the laws should even be laxer.
I have some.
But I think
I was thinking about. I was talking to my cousin Eddie. We were arguing about like how I was telling him like the way you go to other countries and you get treated like an immigrant, the experience gets very bad. And then you're saying about like that's so wrong. Why are Africans treated this way? And then I told him every time I have these things, let's localize this. Let's go back to your village over there where you're all relatives and you know each other. You're the same tribe. Then someone from another tribe comes and buys land right to the smack of your village. Most people will be like, no.
But I think it's a different dynamic.
No, let me. Okay.
When you talk about like,
let me tell you why.
Discrimination.
No, let me tell you. That's not discrimination. That's like this person is different. He's coming to pollute our way
Chris,
of life.
have you ever experienced? Yeah, you've never lived abroad, have you?
I've experienced racism.
No, have you ever lived abroad?
Yes.
Where Homa Bay is not abroad, my guy.
Damn!
Hey, brother.
Let me tell you.
It's like
I am.
It is so painful.
You know what I'm
Like,
saying?
it's the most
What I'm
painful.
saying is this. This is my point. Whatever was done to you when you are abroad is the same thing you'll do to somebody.
I don't think so.
Let me tell you.
No.
Go right smack in the middle of Siaya. And then a Kikuyu buys land like next to your village.
It's a different dynamic.
No.
Race
relations. Let me tell you. You know what will happen?
We're very welcoming.
It's very true, by the way. Laws are very welcoming.
No,
yes.
let me tell you. If you go to Kisumu, they'll welcome you. You go right smack in the middle of the village where you're very different. You speak a different language. You eat different food. You'll always be treated with suspicion. No one wants to deal with you. People are always. Let me tell you. And I was thinking this was
Chris,
just.
I disagree.
No. There's one of a guy was repairing my car, and he's telling me he lives Kisumu, somewhere close to Asembo Bay. So he was telling me his father died, and they wanted to sell some portion of the land, right? Then some Kikuyu showed up. He had the money to buy the land. Guys are like, we need the money, but you want this foreigner to come and live amongst us, right? We're used to a certain norm of life. We're used to the way we greet each other in the morning, and we don't know if this guy will be bringing his relatives here. Then I came to think about when I think about racism in the UK, in the US, and Australia, and all these countries. It clicked into me that they see us as a very different kind of people who are coming to pollute their way of life. And then I'm like, in a smaller level, we're doing that. If you just go to some random village in Somalia or somewhere and say like, open world, I want to buy 2 acres here.
But the nuances are different. Well, this is...
We're talking about racism here.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. The nuances are different between what you're explaining and racism. Because here, I remember you're Kenyan. There's still that feeling of home and everything. You're never going to feel...
What I'm saying is this... I agree.
And that's true when I go to other African countries. It's very different when you go to a Western country. It's very different.
We already started by saying the degree of separation of your DNA with somebody creates the animosity. The way, as much as if I go to Uganda and
Chris,
I get discriminated, it won't be the same way if I go to India.
Chris, but that's something that you've learned.
Learned about?
Like this degree of separation, you'll treat someone differently. It's a learned behavior. Yes or no? I am not born.
Let me give an experience. Let me give an experience.
On a DNA level, level, you actually are born to push away people who are different from you.
Totally... You guys, do you have data on this?
Let me tell you an experience that I had.
I can
Many years ago, I think I was in class 3, right? My uncle was a lecturer at Kenyatta University, and there was a lecturer's quarters just when you get to the gate. So during school holidays, I used to visit him. Then, so when I used to get bored, I used to walk around the lecturer's quarters. Then, as I was walking around, I'm looking for panya routes to go through behind people's houses. Then I got into a house. Then there was an Indian lady who, so she came out of the house and threw some chapatis in the dust. She opened the dustbin and threw the chapatis. Then she just threw them, and I was passing next to her. She called me like, "Hey, come." So when I come, she opened the dustbin, took the chapatis, and gave them to me. I've never felt so much insulted in my life. I'm like class 3. Then I'm like, do I look poor? Do I look like a chokora? Do I look... If it was an Indian kid passing, would they have given the Indian kid the...
Shampoo from the dustbin.
Shampoo for the dustbin. So I just told her, no. I'm okay. And then I walked away. But it really bothered me. Because...
As it should.
Yeah. Exactly. Because I was like what's wrong with me? And this in class 3. Mm-hmm. Then I came to realize there is a way they treat people who are different than them.
Yeah.
Right? And you can consider that to be casual racism, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if it was a white guy or an Indian, he wouldn't have given them food from the dustbin for that case. So we are both living in Kenya, right? I'm assuming she was Kenyan, right? But our degree of separation was enough to her to treat me differently for that, right? So as you increase that degree of separation, you can say that you can experience...
Do you think a Kenyan would have done that to you?
A fellow Kenyan?
Yeah. Would have done the exact same thing in that way, in that manner?
I don't think so.
Exactly.
Because I've said degree of what?
Separation.
I've gone back and said, if... in that example of like you're in Siaya and a guy, there's some degree of separation, not so much. So it means the discrimination will be there, but it will be limited. The more you increase that degree of separation, now that animosity and everything else just becomes bigger.
So let's say it was a white guy who was buying the property in Siaya.
Oh, they would love him. They would worship him. They're like, bring more of you here. Because whiteness has been, even if you go to a restaurant, yeah, I don't tip as a principle because I'm like, you could have increased the price of the food and make your money off the food. That is my principle. A fellow Kenyan, like a waitress, will sit there 20 minutes waiting to be served, and a white guy or white lady will be treated, and it's common knowledge because this guy could probably tip like 1,000 bob or like 500 bob. You there will be like asante. Hey, the service was good. So because of that white guy will be Hail Mary because they'll expect more money. Anyway, sometimes they tip because they have more money or it's their culture. To me, I just think tipping is wrong, right? It doesn't make sense to me. And I had a very bad experience in Cape Town, right? We went to Cape Town. We went for a conference and we were Kenyans, and I think we're all Kenyans. I think, yeah, most of us were Kenyans. So we went to Cape Town where they have these colored houses. So we found a very nice restaurant. So we stayed there. We ate and we...
Is it the African place?
Afrikaans, yeah.
They have African food?
No. This was just some mixed food. I think it was Indian food plus some
nice
Western food that was there. The food was good. The meat was fantastic. So we ate. We were about almost 10 of us. Maybe about 10 of us. So after eating, our total bill was about 20K Kenyan shillings. Mm-hmm. So we were very happy. So everyone contributed their bit. We paid. So when we were about to leave, this guy came in and closed the door. Is there any problem? We're like, no. Was the service okay? Yes. Was the food okay? Yes. Then why didn't you tip? And this guy stood at the door like, you guys go back and figure out
how you're going to tip.
How you're going to tip. And to me, I was like, excuse me.
Increase your food prices.
Just make the food more expensive. So I'll decide to go to another restaurant where the food is cheaper. So we ended up like, hey guys, how much? So we ended up, you're doing your calculation with the rand. So like everyone is giving like, I don't know, 5 rand.
Put it 10% or something.
Yeah, it has to, and it has to be 10% for that. I felt very wronged, right? And from that day, I decided I'm not eating in at a restaurant.
But why do you have an issue tipping? I just think it's just a different culture, different vibe. Like
No,
I just
no,
think
no.
it's
See, tipping.
not here. I'm not
Tipping
here, but
technically means you've not paid because you see the thing
it's like an incentive for the server.
No, Actually, in America, no, it's not.
Okay,
It's
in
not an
Kenya,
incentive.
guys, you're
Let me
not
ask
in
you.
America.
Okay, I asked-
Did you know how much those guys earn? First, just empathize with these waitresses and
hold on.
waiters.
They earn more than minimum wage.
Hold on.
Let's start there.
How are you sure?
Hold on.
Guys,
What do you think that
guys.
is?
Hold on.
Generally.
Hold on.
Generally,
hold
no.
on.
Yes.
No.
Yes,
I want to
because
debunk-
these
I
are
want to de-
taxed
I want to debunk
companies.
this nonsense. Yeah.
It's nonsense. Tipping is nonsense.
You're a
Do you-
salesman.
No. Do you tip and do the guy?
Yes,
Do you,
sometimes.
do you tip Mjengo guy? Do you tip when a conductor has shown you direction?
You tip your accountant.
Do you tip your accountant?
Okay, not the accountant, but yeah, like
No,
do the guy.
they're
Yes,
all
you could
services.
ongeza him a 50 bob or
They're
a
all
100 bob.
services.
No. The only industry where tipping exists and it's forced on you is on restaurant because that Mjengo guy earns less. In fact, that Mjengo guy comes every day. No. I have worked
He's
at
been at
Mjengo.
Mjengo.
He has actually worked as a
Mjengo, there is no tipping in Mjengo. In fact, some days you go home without the money, mdosi yuko, and you have to go buy food for your family, right? And sometimes they're like, today only 400 is available. You ingine ndawalipa kesho, right? So you can't, and those Mjengo guys earn less than those servers.
So your issue is paying the tip. So if the
My
if
issue
the
is
price
this.
was 10%
my
more
issue
without
was
knowing
this.
there's a tip,
My
you'd be
issue
okay.
was this.
Yes.
No. My issue.
okay.
This is my issue.
I would.
No. Hold on. If the food is not paying enough of their salaries, increase the food price so that you can pay them
their salaries. Yes.
And there's some restaurants in the US which strictly say no tipping. Because even if it's that, it's only the beautiful ones who get more tips, which means it's already biased.
Yeah. The research is there.
It's
the data
there.
backs
So
it up.
it's even lopsided. And then also, the person who's cooking the food never gets the tips. It
No,
is the
I mean, when I've also worked as a waitress for a long time, we used to give the chefs, like you get money and,
Yes.
and you give the chefs
Do the
money.
beautiful ones make more money?
I made good money when I was tipping.
So this tipping is nonsense.
Guys, I feel like we've gone off topic here. Can
No,
we,
no,
Kwanzaa,
ask me a
you know,
question.
technically, I'm supposed to be getting to work in the next so long. So let's move this along. Yeah. Based off the posts, the very first post, it definitely came off a little bit arrogant. He did not have enough data to back what he was talking about. But generally, when it comes to expats, I let them come. Maybe they can be a little bit more polite, more culturally aware. But let all people come. I'm generally let it be open. I think that's where I calm down on this conversation.
Okay, for me, I think in life there has to be mutual respect. When you go into a new market, start your own business, and you're working with people who are not of your own like nationality or race, just have some basic humility, respect the culture, and don't be arrogant. Just have some humility. That's it. I think the more the merrier. Don't undermine the people who are working for you in your business. And I think everything will be okay. So, I think it's just once there's reciprocity in terms of respect, all goes well.
Chris. Africans, you are dumb.
And keep it short.
You can never negotiate from a point of weakness. I think the reason why those from the post that it sounds arrogant is because he knows he's coming with investments, right? And he can, let's say for lose town, he can say whatever he wants and he'll have zero consequences because he can walk away with his money, and the government really needs that foreign exchange right now. So I believe I have my own personal philosophy, but I don't expect it from other people. I expect politeness. I expect understanding. I expect just decency and dealing with people as humans. But I'm very aware that there's somebody who will deal with me in a very inhuman way because they can, and there are no consequences to come from that. So if foreigners who come, until we get to the point of strength, will not be able to set any rules.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that it's all about respect. It's all, I don't know, and I think these conversations are important. Like, I think sometimes it's that elephant in the room, and as Kenyans, we don't have that conversation. We don't call out these things. We'll just sit back and be like, oh, I'm not going to call this out. Again, I understand that it comes from a place of, we're all trying to escape poverty. But I think having these conversations, And if any foreigner expatriate is listening to this, like, I think at the end we've all kind of agreed. Like, we want you here. We just want to work together well. Like,
Exactly.
and we they can be. It's so beautiful when there's respect and there's understanding and we're working together. We just want success. So I guess, yeah.
Have you ever heard the saying that a poor man has no dignity?
Yes, I've had, and it's true. It's very true.
And we are poor, so we can't afford dignity.
Okay. But then again, I think when you come into the technology space, I think that space, as Sydney said, it needs to be created.
Yeah.
It's so important because these small businesses, these upcoming, founders, people coming out of university have great ideas, and we should allow them to,
The Chinese.
Chris, we're ending this.
We're ending the podcast.
We're ending by saying, let's be like the Chinese.
Okay, how?
And thanking our guests today.
You're welcome back.
To cooperate.
I hope we've not scared you.
Not at all. Thanks, guys. That was
But
fun.
these debates are good. I think it's good to have like this conversation. It gets you like thinking.
It's good to, when you think, you see the gap in your mind.
Yeah. Cool. Anyway, thanks. If you have like any thoughts, any comments, are there aspects of this we missed out? Please let us know. How long was this? 2 hours? That it's been long. If you made it to the end, I want to say, just put in the comment section. Peace, love, and respect. That's it.
And thanks,
see you.
Steve.
And thanks.
Thank you,
thank
everyone. Thanks for having me.
For joining the madness.
It was fun.
One day the poor will become poorest, and the poorest will become the poorest of the poorestest. The poorest of the poorestest. If we continue to give temporary solution to the poorest of the poor, to the poorest of the poor, one day the poor will become poorest, and the poorest will become the poorest of the poorestest. The poorest of the poorestest. Let's have a rethink. Let's think about this again and give the permanent solution to the poor.